Chapter 889. These 2 days, Chang'an was not peaceful. Everyone stared with wide eyes, waiting for the basketball to appear. And in the palace, ever since Li Chengqian bid farewell to Li Shimin and Li Yuan, he went to Empress Zhongxuan's place to pay his respects, then hurriedly left the palace. In his bosom, he carried a letter that Li Yuan wrote to Zhang Feng. Thinking of the contents of the letter, Li Chengqian could not help but be speechless. This retired emperor actually asked the person in charge of construction to build a basketball court in the palace that was dedicated to him. Although this request was nothing much, who would dare to do something that had never been seen before? Who would be able to bear the responsibility? Originally, Imperial Father was building a private residence for you, but you didn't even look at it. Instead, you gave it to Zhang Feng. Li Chengqian couldn't help but feel jealous. That private residence, the amount of money spent, as well as the design, were all of a higher standard than the palace. The main reason was that Li Shimin wanted to take care of Li Yuan's life, so he did everything he could. But now, this damned brat, he didn't even look at it. Looking at the groggy Wang Kong, Li Chengqian could not help but sigh. All the good things were taken away by the pig. Oh, isn't this young Master Li? At this moment, Li Chengqian disguised himself in the sedan and prepared to slip away to Tong Hui Fong. However, when he turned around, he bumped into an acquaintance. A fair-weather friend of his when he was stubborn in Chang'an. Seeing Li Chengqian now, the person also looked at the sedan in surprise and said, "What, did young Master Li just slip away from home?" Li Chengqian chuckled perfunctorily. That person grabbed Li Chengqian and asked mysteriously, "I just heard a piece of news. Brother Li, you're at White Deer College. Have you ever heard of basketball?" Li Chengqian asked in surprise, "You know about it too?" The youth wearing a pink gown glanced at Li Chengqian and said, "Brother Li, are you doubting my intelligence? Who in Chang'an doesn't know about this?" However, just now, when I was in Swallow Descent restaurant, I heard that someone was currently transporting large amounts of wood outside the city, as well as some kind of cement that is said to be able to instantly turn into stone. Do you know about this matter? Li Chengqian grew impatient. Brother Mo, feel free to speak your mind. I still have an important matter to attend to and meet the dean. If there is any delay. When that person heard this, he also put away his joking expression and said, "To be honest, I really do have some matters to attend to. Brother Li also knows about the matter of my father working in the Ministry of Works. Today, after learning about the miraculous effects of the cement, I was thinking of doing some renovations to my residence. That was why I thought of Brother Li. Right now, it seems like Brother Li and Principal Zhang have quite a deep relationship, so..." Li Chengqian's eyes narrowed slightly. "You want cement?" "Yeah. As long as Brother Li is willing to help me with this big favor. I've heard that a thief from the previous dynasty was caught and his whole family was escorted back to the capital. One of the women was simply an outstanding beauty. When the time comes, I'll use my connections to send her to Brother Li's residence." Li Chengqian had also heard of this matter. Although he was tempted, how could he have the time and mood to think about it at this time? At this moment, a cold and somewhat charming voice startled the two of them. "Isn't this young Master Li? Young Master Li is also going to Prince Zhang's tavern?" The voice was very charming. When the pink-clothed youth heard the voice, he was completely dumbfounded. He slowly turned around with a love-struck expression. What entered his eyes was a pair of charming eyes under the curtain of a carriage, causing the youth's saliva to flow all over the ground. Li Chengqian knew who the person was the moment he heard the voice. He had also seen the power of this woman. Not daring to meet her eyes, he bowed and said, "Li Chengqian greets Miss Yu Er." That's right. The person who had come was Yuqi Yu Er. When the pink-clothed youth saw that the two of them knew each other, he hurriedly wiped the saliva off his mouth and stepped forward to bow elegantly. Mo Zitsong greets Miss Yu Er. Who was Yuqi Yu Er? Although she had not seen thousands of such debauches, she had seen hundreds of them. Therefore, she automatically filtered out Mo Zitsong's words and looked at Li Chengqian instead. "Brother Mo, let me give you a word of advice. You're a femme fatale." Then, he continued Yuqi Yu Er's words. "That's right. We're going to the tavern. Why did Miss Yu Er come today? Because of the basketball matter." Yuqi Yu Er invited Li Chengqian into the carriage, but Li Chengqian refused. This made Yuqi Yu Er a little surprised. She pursed her lips and said, "Could it be that young Master Li is afraid of me?" Cough cough. "Miss Yu Er, What are you saying? Fengzi is still waiting. You go ahead first. I'll catch up later. What a joke. Li Chengqian did not dare to provoke this woman. Probably only that pervert Fengzi could control such a poisonous scorpion. The pink-clothed young man couldn't help but stare blankly at this scene. Especially Li Chengqian's actions just now. It was completely different from the young Master Li he knew. Could it be that this woman was really so afraid? However, this was not important. Damn it. They did not even talk about the proper business. While Mo Zizong was beating his chest and stamping his feet, Yu Qigong and Chang Yaojin's subordinates, a large number of soldiers from the Chang'an military camp, disguised as ordinary people, entered Chang'an City's city gate with a large amount of wood. Yu Qigong and Chang Yaojin rode on big horses. Although ordinary people would not be able to resist the two of them because of their makeup, their ferocious faces were still frightening. When the people surrounding Chang'an City's gate saw the carriages full of wood, they could not help but exclaim, "Could these people be craftsmen from Shao Mountain? Are they here to build a basketball court?" Chapter 890. The people who built the basketball court had entered the city. This news spread like wildfire among the commoners. In an instant, countless people gathered behind the carriages. They wanted to see how these pieces of wood could become the rumored object in the hands of these people. Chang Yaojin and Yu Qigong wandered around Chang'an City for a while. Then, Yu Qigong turned his horse's head and said, "Why don't we build one at the entrance of Tonghui Lane?" Chang Yaojin nodded. "You don't say. This place is connected to all directions and connects the east and the west. If we build it here, not only will it highlight Fengzi, but it will also make Tonghui Lane's reputation soar." "Okay, let's do it here." The two of them discussed and decided on the matter. On the other side, Niu Weili first went to Niu Pai Huang's workshop. When he did not see Zhang Feng, he went to Zhang Feng's tavern with Niu Pai Huang, who had just finished making the basketball. At this time, Zhang Feng was already sleeping soundly under the crooked tree at the entrance of the tavern. The two of them did not dare to disturb him. They squatted beside Zhang Feng with the basketball in their arms and waited. Not long after, Yu Qiyuer's palanquin slowly came to a stop at the entrance of the tavern under their gazes. When Niu Weili saw the standard on the sedan chair, his scalp went numb. "Well, wait here. I'll come back another day." After saying that, Niu Weili used his running speed to escape from here. Seeing this, Niu Weili's yellow skin was stunned. What a joke. That was the sedan chair of Duke Yi's residence. Others might not recognize it, but as a small county magistrate of Chang'an, how could he not recognize it? On the first day he came to Chang'an City, the first thing he did was to remember all the high-ranking officials and dignitaries in Chang'an City. The symbol on the carriage was the best proof. Niu Weili's back could not help but break out in cold sweat as he ran. Yesterday, he also noticed the carriage and the woman in it. Although he had never seen her before, he knew that she could ride the carriage of Duke Yi's residence and walk around in such a flashy manner in Chang'an City. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would know that this person wasn't someone they could afford to offend. In addition, he had heard from others yesterday that this woman had only left the tavern after a long time. If she wasn't close to Prince Zhang, who would dare to do so? Today, he came to find Zhang Feng to ask for a favor. If that sentence offended the person who came, then his life would be over. However, before Niu Weili could walk out of Tong Hui Fong, he saw two tall and burly men riding horses in front of Tong Hui Fong. Niu Weili, who had a stomach full of anger, finally found a way to vent. After tidying up his clothes, he appeared at the entrance of Tong Hui Fong with a gloomy face and coldly shouted, "Stop! Who are you? Don't you know you can't ride a horse in Chang'an City?" Hearing this, Yu Qigongqing and Yu Qigongqing were all stunned. The soldiers were more interested in watching a good show. The surrounding officials and common people looked at Niu Weili with ridicule. It was indescribably strange. Niu Weili's mind was still in a mess, so he didn't notice the strange atmosphere. He stepped forward and scolded, "Where are the barbarians from? Don't you know the law of Chang'an City? Get off the horse quickly, or follow me to the Chang'an local government. Ordinary." Before he finished, Niu Weili's knees went soft and he knelt on the road, trembling all over. "Hey you, who is this fool?" Chang Yaojin looked at Niu Weili in surprise and asked. Yu Qigong didn't know. He scratched his head and said, "I don't care who he is. Let's do what we should do." Later, we'll find Fengzi for a drink. You two, get off the horse quickly. This is the county magistrate of Chong, and local government. Yesterday, he became friends with Prince Zhang. They are brothers. Puff. Before the onlookers finished, Nyo Weili spat out a mouthful of blood and said in a trembling voice, I didn't know it was you too. I'll get out of here. Please continue. Pretend you didn't see me. As he spoke, Nyo Weili staggered to his feet and scrambled away. Damn it. Why were these two gods of slaughter here? Although the two of them were in disguise, he still remembered the jade plates on their belts. There were 5 green dragon tokens given by the emperor. Yu Qigong, Chang Yaojin, Li Jing, Niu Jinda, Qin Qiong, and Qin Shubao. These 5 lords were told on the first day in the Chong and local government that they couldn't be provoked. To think that I would be able to see 2 of them today. And judging from their figures, they were the most difficult to deal with, the devil Chang Yaojin and the reckless Yu Qigong. Damn it, what was wrong with Lao Tzu today? Nyo Weili wanted to cry. However, Yu Qigong and Chang Yaojin were confused. But judging from Nyo Weili's behavior, this old guy seemed to have recognized them. Lao He, it seems that you're not doing a good job. Yu Qigong joked. Chang Yaojin pointed at a soldier and said, Go, follow the county magistrate and tell him what we're here for. Yes. The soldier, who was also strong, shook his shoulders and threw a small wooden stake on the ground. He clenched his fists and followed Nyo Weili with a sneer. Chapter 891. Move faster. Don't move the floor tiles. You mother fasterous cur. Go measure it and erect the wooden stake. If Fengzi is not satisfied, Lao Tzu will skin you alive. You mother fasterous cur. What are you going to do with such a small piece of wood? Send it to Fengzi to light the fire. You and the 2 of you, you can't even move a stone lion. What's the use of you? Scram. Go back and get a whip for Lao Tzu. Under the stunned gazes of the onlookers, a pine tree with a diameter of 3 feet and a height of 3 feet was erected at the entrance of the market. This scene stunned everyone. Nero Zhou, who was in the crowd, mustered up his courage and flashed half a cigarette in his hand. He asked, Sir, what are you doing? Yu Qigong glanced at Nero Zhou and his gaze fell on the cigarette in his hand. He frowned and asked, Is this from Tong Hui Fong? Nero Zhou heard this and quickly nodded. Seeing this, Yu Qigong said lazily, Isn't this the basketball court that Fengzi was talking about? Lao Tzu built a basketball court for you. What are you doing? You're embarrassing Fengzi. Don't you know how to help? Basketball court? And it was the first basketball court to be built in Tong Hui Fong? Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this, but then they felt ashamed. It was such a thick piece of wood. It was really difficult for these children to lift it. They could not help but feel embarrassed and rushed forward to help. Nero Zhou's eyes rolled when he saw this. He also ran over to follow or shout to the soldiers who were digging the hole. The miraculous matter of the basketball court being built in Tong Hui Fong was out of control. The people of Chong, and who had nothing better to do, all came forward to see this strange thing. However, when they saw the wooden stake that was much higher than the entrance of the market, all of them could not help but gasp in shock. My mother! This was not something ordinary people could play with. It was so tall. How could it be thrown up? In no time, the news of Tong Hui Fong building a magical basketball court spread like a whirlwind. Zhang Feng also woke up amidst the commotion. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Niu Pai Huang squatting beside him, which gave Zhang Feng a fright. Seeing Zhang Feng wake up, Niu Pai Huang grinned. That mouthful of yellow teeth made Zhang Feng feel nauseous. Done? Zhang Feng hurriedly asked. Niu Pai Huang was so excited that he handed the basketball that Zhang Feng had modified the air valve to Zhang Feng. The basketball was simply polished, and Su Rian looked slightly rough. However, this was the effect that Zhang Feng wanted. As for the appearance, Zhang Feng didn't care. It wouldn't be too late to think about the patterns after the market opened up. Zhang Feng took the basketball and pressed it. The air of the basketball was very strong. He tried to pat it. If it weren't for the Tang dynasty, Zhang Feng would really think that this thing was also a time traveler. Not bad, you did a good job. I'll write you a note later. You go to Shao Mountain and ask the old village chief for money. From now on, I'll buy each of these things at a price of 1 million. How about that? 100 copper coins. This price made Niu Pai Huang tremble with excitement. Even with the addition of the whole piece of cowhide, the total cost was less than 30 copper coins. Niu Pai Huang couldn't help but shed tears of gratitude. Why do you need to go to Shao Mountain? Can't I just give it to him now? At this moment, Li Chengqian's voice sounded from beside the palanquin. Zhang Feng looked over and only then did he notice Yu Qiyu standing beside Li Chengqian. She was wearing a peach-colored gauze dress and holding an oil paper umbrella. Seeing the two of them, Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a question in his mind. You too? Li Chengqian hurriedly waved his hand and said, Don't misunderstand. We just met on the road. Besides, you were sleeping soundly. Miss Yu, couldn't bear to disturb you, so I told her about you. Hearing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel speechless. Seeing this, Yu Qiyu slightly bowed and said, You greets Prince Zhang. I haven't seen you for a day, but Prince Zhang's complexion looks better. My goodness, your grandma's leg. Seeing you, Lao Tzu feels uncomfortable everywhere. However, Zhang Feng only dared to criticize in his heart. After seeing Li Chengqian give Niu Pai Huang a banknote, he smiled and cupped his hands. However, Zhang Feng didn't invite the two of them in. Instead, he asked, What's going on the street? Did the people on the mountain come back? It's so noisy. Li Chengqian was stunned. You don't know? What do I know? Hearing their conversation, Yu Qiyu couldn't help but smile and said, Let you explain. It's at the entrance of Tonghui Square. Cousin and old Chen are building the basketball court Prince Zhang mentioned. Zhang Feng nodded when he heard this. He patted the basketball in his hand, but it was snatched away by Li Chengqian. Out of curiosity, Li Chengqian slammed it on the ground, giving Zhang Feng and Yu Qiyu a fright. The basketball suddenly rose several feet into the air, then bounced off the roof of the tavern and went to another place. Li Chengqian couldn't help but be stunned. Damn, what's that? Did that ball spread its wings? Chapter 892. F***CK. Zhang Feng looked at the basketball that disappeared in the air and couldn't help but burst out with a classic phrase. Yu Qiyu and Niu Pai Huang, who were about to leave, were stunned. Zhang Feng didn't have time to scold Li Chengqian. He ran after the basketball. Yu Qiyu glared at Li Chengqian and also lifted her skirt. She didn't even want the umbrella. Like a butterfly, she chased after Zhang Feng. Prince Zhang, wait for me. Li Chengqian finally reacted. He looked at his own hand, then looked at the yellow leather that was looking at him with bad intentions. He shouted, Why aren't you looking for the ball? If you lose the ball, this young master will strip you and make you into a basketball. As he spoke, Li Chengqian took a step forward and followed after him. This was the first basketball. Naturally, he knew the value of this ball. Otherwise, with Zhang Feng's character, he wouldn't care if he lost it. Why would he chase after it? At most, he would just make another one. There were only 8 days left until the mid-autumn hunt. At the entrance of Tonghui Fang, Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin looked at the busy crowd. They squatted on the side of the road and smoked while pondering about the magic of this basketball. When they were talking about it, the two old men couldn't help but shout angrily. At this moment, Yu Qigong finished his cigarette and was about to add a second one. He heard a dong sound. Someone suddenly slapped his head from the top of his head. Instantly, the cigarette in his mouth went into his throat. It was so hot that Yu Qigong slapped Cheng Yaojin's face. Cheng Yaojin was so angry that he shouted, Are you F***king itching for a beating? Yu Qigong was also anxious. What? Do you want to move around? Lao Tzu provoked you. How dare you slap Lao Tzu's head? Look at Lao Tzu's mouth. It's full of F***king blisters. Mother F***ker, who the F***ck allowed you to smoke? It's like you're doing something. Can't you be more refined? Thump, thump, thump. Just as the two of them were about to fight, a strange sound suddenly rang out beside them. The two of them weren't mortals, so they instantly noticed the bouncing black ball. Yu Qigong, on the other hand, was even more imposing. He grabbed Cheng Yaojin's collar with one hand and punched him with the other. In an instant, that black ball, under everyone's gaze, quickly flew out and bounced off the basketball that had just been erected not far away. Then, it once again flew back to Yu Qigong's face at an even faster speed than before. This time, Cheng Yaojin was dumbfounded. Yuchi Gong also heard the sound of the ball breaking through the air. When he turned his face, it just so happened that his big face was in close contact with the basketball. Boom! Yuchi Gong was, after all, a martial artist. The power of his punch was naturally different from others. At this time, after the basketball slowly bounced away, under the horrified gaze of the crowd, 2 long streams of blood gushed out from Yuchi Gong's nose like spring water. At this time, everyone looked at the strange thing and sucked in a breath of cold air. The dignified Duke of E was actually sneakily attacked by a hidden weapon? In an instant, the soldiers who were working were all excited and were about to surround the ball. Some of them even chased after the basketball. They kicked and punched and kicked it even more vigorously. The onlookers burst into laughter. At this time, Nero Zhou looked at Yuchi Gong's nose with some confusion and then looked at the black thing that everyone was chasing. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and exclaimed, "Isn't that Prince Zhang's basketball? Who brought it here?" At this time, everyone was stunned. They looked at the basketball in astonishment. Cheng Yaojin, who was laughing at Yuchi Gong, and Yuchi Gong, who was rolling up his sleeves in a rage, were also stunned. Yuchi Gong wiped the blood from his nose and angrily pointed at Nero Zhou. "Boy, let me ask you. Are you sure that this thing is Fengzi's basketball? If you dare to lie, Lao Tzu will tear you apart alive." Nero Zhou was obviously frightened by Yuchi Gong's fierceness. He said with trembling legs, "Master, this is really Prince Zhang's basketball. Today at the entrance of Niu Pai Huang, everyone saw it." "Yes, Master. This ball was made by Prince Zhang. I also saw it at that time, but it didn't look so lively at that time." Hearing that, all the onlookers could not help but be shocked. "What? Are you sure this thing is Prince Zhang's basketball? Why does it look so strange? Oh my God!" At this time, Yuchi Gong and Cheng Yaojin could not help but be secretly shocked. This thing. They finally knew how to use it in the military. This damn thing was simply prepared for the training of sharpshooters. "Come on, catch it for me. Mother Fastress Kerr, who told you to kick it? If you break it, you won't be able to pay for it even if I kill you." Finally, the group of bandits became obedient. After a while, they caught the basketball and respectfully handed it to Yuchi Gong. Cheng Yaojin wanted to play, but Yuchi Gong pushed him aside. Bang! Yuchi Gong smashed it hard on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the basketball suddenly rose several feet into the air. Yuchi Gong could not help but be amused. "Hey! This kid is really *King talent." Chapter 893. Cheng Yaojin had long been itching to play. Seeing that Yuchi Gong was not paying attention, he kicked him aside and grabbed the basketball. He hugged the basketball with both hands and laughed. Old you, I said you don't know how to play. You really don't know how to play. Let me show you how I play." While talking, Cheng Yaojin almost used all his strength. He raised both hands above his head and was about to throw the basketball down. At this moment, Zhang Feng's angry voice also sounded not far away. "Stop!" Bang! But it was too late. The black basketball in Cheng Yaojin's hand had already broken countless willow branches in an instant and rushed into the sky under Zhang Feng's frightened, distressed, and angry eyes. For a moment, Zhang Feng's eyes were filled with distress, anger, and an impulse to kill. Yuchi Yuer, Li Chengqian, Niu Pai Huang, and the others who were following closely behind were even more shocked. Especially Li Chengqian, whose face changed instantly. At this moment, Cheng Yaojin and Yuchi Gong also noticed Zhang Feng's face. The onlookers also noticed his face. After a commotion, the crowd could not help but slowly retreat. Hey, Fengzi, don't be so stingy. Isn't this the way to play this thing?" Cheng Yaojin saw Zhang Feng's face and his heart skipped a beat. But who was he? He was Cheng Yaojin, a pain in the ass. He touched his nose and could not find anything. As for his face? What was that thing? He really did not know what it was. Seeing this, Nero Zhou rolled his eyes. Seeing that no one cared about the basketball falling down, he hurriedly rushed up and wanted to catch the basketball to take the credit. But when he opened his arms and waited for the basketball to fall into his arms, a pair of big hands swayed in front of him and the basketball steadily fell into Yuchi Gong's hands. And he coldly glanced at Nero Zhou. This glance made Nero Zhou tremble all over. They hurriedly retreated to the back of the crowd, not daring to move. At this time, Zhang Feng finally caught up. He angrily snatched the basketball and looked at it with distress. He almost covered it under his buttocks. Mother****, Lao Tzu hadn't even played the ball when it was ready. Mother****, Lao Tzu was almost reimbursed. Are you guys stupid? If Lao Tzu doesn't have a ball during the mid-autumn hunt, Lao Tzu will fight it out with you. Chang Yaojin finally realized that something wasn't right. Under Li Chengqian's gaze, he hurriedly asked, Fengzi, this isn't how you play it? Zhang Feng looked at the scratches on the ball with heartache and said fiercely, What do you think? If I let you guys play like this, Lao Tzu wouldn't be able to do it. I'll just let you guys do it. This ball suddenly hit his face. Look, it's bleeding. I don't know where it came from, so in order to avenge my brother, I can only do this. I thought it was some kind of hidden weapon. The more Cheng Yaojin said, the more guilty he felt. In the end, he couldn't help but stare at Li Chengqian and ask, What's the matter with this ball? Why did it grow legs and run over here? It's him, master. It's not my fault. It's him. He took it from Prince Zhang, and then just like you just did, Niu Pai Huang betrayed Li Chengqian without any sense of loyalty. In his opinion, Fengzi was known for being honest and always being bullied. Who didn't know that Li Chengqian was stubborn? Seeing the disaster, Niu Pai Huang immediately stood on Zhang Feng's side. Li Chengqian was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. Well, I didn't do it on purpose. Hey! So it was you who did it? Come. Look at my nose, look at my mouth. Don't you know how useful Fengzi's basketball is? You took it out to tease old man? How could Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin let go of such a good thing? They immediately stood up and began to blame Li Chengqian. 8 days. There are only 8 days left. Fengzi put in a lot of effort. Do you think it's easy for him? What are you thinking, kid? And you. Forget it. I can't be bothered to talk about you. As he spoke, Yu Qigong pointed at Yu Qiyue, wanting to say something. Although Yu Qiyue was wearing a peach-colored veil, her enchanting eyes narrowed slightly. She looked as if she had been wronged, causing Yu Qigong to smack his lips and turn around to vent his frustration at Li Chengqian. Enough. Let's stop acting, okay? Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. He quickly stopped everyone. How could he not know that they were acting? However, Zhang Feng's words caused them to be stunned. What's acting? Zhang Feng instantly exploded. How the F***ck would I know what acting is? Let me ask you. Do you think Lao Tzu is a bully? When Lao Tzu is ruthless, he even beat up his own people. Do you think I'm a coward? They were speechless. Knowing that Zhang Feng had said the wrong thing, he was infuriated. Otherwise, how could he have said such a stupid thing? Now that Zhang Feng was angry, they did not want to get into trouble. He could only accept whatever Zhang Feng said and smile sheepishly as he apologized. The onlookers were already dumbfounded. As for the soldiers, they were already doing what they were supposed to do. They did not even dare to look. Which son of AB***TCH would dare to get into trouble at this time? That was simply courting death. That was F***King hysteria. Chapter 894. After Zhang Feng sulked for a while, he calmed down for a while. Li Chengqian hurried forward and pressed Zhang Feng down on the steps. He let him sit down and wiped his back to help him breathe. At this point, Zhang Feng finally breathed a sigh of relief. He waved his hand weakly and said, Okay, I'm not angry anymore. I'm very happy. You did a good job with this basketball. The quality of this thing is very good. Zhang Feng tried to put on a smile that was uglier than crying. He touched his chest with one hand and tried to calm himself down. At this time, he would be courting death if he quarreled with these two hooligans. Moreover, he would be laughed at for no reason. Yu Qiyue couldn't listen anymore. After seeing Zhang Feng's expression, she couldn't help but laugh. Yu Qigong stared at her fiercely, but it didn't work. Do you have a cigarette? Zhang Feng said calmly, but he still held the basketball tightly. Yes. Yu Qigong hurriedly handed Zhang Feng a cigarette. He lit it for him. Zhang Feng sat on the ground and took a few deep breaths. Then he tried to calm himself down. Looking at the two big pillars not far away, he asked, "What is this thing?" Zhang Feng was really angry at this time. A basketball was a small matter, but if there was a problem with this thing, he really couldn't be sure whether he could make another one in 8 days. The most important reason was, he was running out of rubber. Looking at the remaining rubber in the pot, it was the limit to make 5 more. And this was the situation when he first started. If it was Niu Pai Huang, who knew if he could make 3? It would be great if there were steel wires. At least it was durable. Otherwise, if it was given to these people, he was sure that if they kept playing like this, in less than 2 hours, even if there were 10, they would all be finished. Zhang Feng couldn't help but sigh. After stroking the basketball in his arms and making sure it was fine, Zhang Feng's anger subsided a little. However, after seeing the 2 poles, Zhang Feng was dumbfounded again. He really couldn't understand why such a big piece of wood was erected here. With the help of the soldiers, Yu Qigong managed to stop his nosebleed. He said, "Isn't this the club you made according to the method you said? Is it wrong?" Zhang Feng dared not say it was wrong. He was afraid of being beaten. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Not bad, but yours is a little big." "Old Yu, do you think anyone can jump so high? Are you sure that from a few years old to a 70 or 80 years old woman can compete with your physical strength?" Zhang Feng asked as he pointed to the hoop on the cue stick that was 4 meters above the ground. Yu Qigong scratched the back of his head. "That's what you said. Who knew that this thing needs to be jumped? Such a small ball, I can easily throw it in. Don't talk about a ball, I can even throw such a big lump of metal into it. Do you think everyone is like you?" Zhang Feng stared at Yu Qigong with an expressionless face. Yu Qigong's face stiffened when he heard that. He then smiled awkwardly and said, "Then what do you think we should do? The pole is already erected. Tear it down. What else can we do?" Zhang Feng's entire body was about to crack. It was such a simple thing that even a fool could think of. Why couldn't he? Do you think everyone is as big and burly as you are? At that moment, Li Chengqian and Yu Qiyu also looked at Zhang Feng and Yu Qigong arguing with each other with a stunned expression. They couldn't help but look at each other. Their expressions were indescribably shocked. At that moment, Yu Qigong and Zhang Feng argued for a while. Under Zhang Feng's threat of quitting, they finally compromised. "Then what do we do if we tear it down?" "This. Come, Li Chengqian. Bring me a pen and paper." Zhang Feng finally couldn't take it anymore. He hurriedly waved his hand and took the opportunity to hold back the blood in his throat. Li Chengqian, who had caused trouble, ran faster than a rabbit. He got a pen and ink from somewhere and tossed a piece of white paper to Zhang Feng under everyone's envious gazes. Zhang Feng took the pen and paper and started drawing on the ground. Everyone couldn't help but stretch their necks, wanting to see what Zhang Feng was up to. Zhang Feng wasn't an art student, but at that moment, he had the illusion that he was forced to be one. Everything had to be drawn clearly, and even the dimensions were clearly marked. Moments later, a proper backboard appeared before everyone's eyes. "That's it?" Yu Qigong's eyes widened when he saw that. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You should have told me earlier about such a simple thing. Look at this mess. It wasn't easy for me to get this freshly cut wood from Peng Mountain. It's all ruined now. You." Zhang Feng clutched his chest and trembled in anger. Yu Qigong continued to hammer his head and sigh. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Zhang Feng was completely mad. He turned to Cheng Yaojin with lifeless eyes and said, "Old Chen, where's your saber? I want to chop someone up." Chapter 895. Seeing this, everyone hurriedly carried Zhang Feng back to the tavern. They didn't dare to provoke him anymore. Yu Qigong and the others hurriedly went to find a carpenter, swearing that they would finish this thing before nightfall. Only then did Zhang Feng stop. At this time, Yu Qigong felt refreshed. The grudge of being tricked by Zhang Feng had been avenged. Although he had gotten his revenge, Yu Qigong knew the seriousness of the matter. He didn't dare to be careless and hurriedly went to the marine training ground. When it came to wood, and ready-made wooden planks at that, where else could there be? Without a doubt, it was the marine training ground. As for what to do after it was done, Yu Qigong didn't think about it. As long as they dared to ask him for it, he would just give them the wood shipped to Chang'an City. On the other side, At this time, the desolate mountain wasn't so peaceful. The old village chief carried a bellyful of good news and spread it along the way. He wanted everyone to know about Zhang Feng's great achievements. In the end, everyone was shocked to know about the dean's plan. Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao looked at the old village chief who was smiling so widely that his wrinkles were blooming. They asked anxiously, "Did he say when he'll be back? How can he be there alone?" The old village head blinked, but in the end, he decided to hide the matter of Yu Qi Yu. However, he could still deceive Zhang Yuyao. As for whether he could deceive Jing Shu, that was unknown. After reporting that he was safe, the old village chief didn't disturb them anymore. He got up and ran to the waterfall. At this time, Yu Shernan and the others had already entered Zhang Feng's living room. As soon as they entered, they asked in surprise, "Old village chief, what is that kid up to at the foot of the mountain again?" Without waiting for Yu Shernan to finish, Sun Simiao also came up and asked, "Old man just heard that Feng Zi spent a month with us at the foot of the mountain to come up with a basketball formula." Old village chief, tell me, what is this basketball? Why doesn't old man know? The old village chief was stunned. Just as he was about to thank them, he was stunned when he heard what they said. "What? You don't know? What do we know?" Yu Shernan's face stiffened. He snorted coldly and said, "Looks like it's that brat's doing again. He hasn't done anything yet. You're going to accuse us of something that doesn't even exist? If this goes on for a long time, what will happen?" Sun Simiao was even more anxious. His entire life's reputation. Although he knew that Zhang Feng's medical skills weren't shallow, he didn't even know about something that could prolong one's life. How could this kid know? If something went wrong after eating it, wouldn't that be terrible? Sun Simiao couldn't help but hurriedly step forward and pull the old village chief's hand, asking, "Old village chief, hurry up and tell me, what is this thing that can strengthen the body and prolong life like?" The old village chief thought about the black thing and wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. He asked, "You don't know what's in the pot?" "What pot?" Hearing this, the old village chief suddenly understood. This is bad. That brat even lied to me? Yu Shernan and the others couldn't help but turn pale with fright. They hurriedly asked, "Why don't you tell us what that brat is doing first, and then we'll see what we can do. That brat is very sly." "How would I know? I don't know where he got a pot of black stuff from, and the smell is even worse than the toilet. By the way, do you know about cowhide yellow? The guy who cooks cowhide yellow?" The more they listened, the more confused they felt. Their hearts couldn't help but thump. "Didn't you say that Feng was tinkering with something? Why did he go to that place? Could it be that he went to look for cinnabar? But what's there in that place? Where is there cinnabar?" That brat said that he was tinkering with some kind of basketball, something that could be used to deal with this mid-autumn hunt. The old village chief stomped his feet anxiously. As he spoke, he prepared to run down the mountain. The others hurriedly pressed him down on the bench. Yu Shernan looked at Zhong Ren suspiciously and asked, "Believe me, do you remember that brat said that he was tinkering with something to deal with this mid-autumn hunt?" "Yes, I remember, but this... What if that brat is up to something unorthodox? Then what will we do?" The few of them couldn't help but be shocked. Could it be that this brat was tinkering with a basketball? They couldn't help but surround the old village chief and tell him everything that he had heard and seen in detail. The more they listened, the more confused they became. Although they were certain that Zhang Feng was up to something and wasn't cheating, they didn't know the specifics. They couldn't help but call Zhang Sun over and ask him to go down the mountain immediately to see what Zhang Feng was up to, and report back as soon as possible. As for Zhang Yuyao, she couldn't help but sit at the side and choke as she listened to everyone's words. As she sobbed, Zhang Yuyao glared fiercely at the few of them and said over and over again in her heart, "Prince Zhang is risking his life at the foot of the mountain, and you bunch of old men are here talking nonsense. Aren't you ashamed?" Chapter 896. Zhang Sun had been so busy these past few days that he felt like he was about to fly. On one hand, he had to deal with the smelting workshop. On the other hand, he had to deal with the mobilization of the people on the mountain. He and Cheng Chumo were so tired that they were about to collapse. But just now, he was finally free. Yu Shernan had personally ordered him to immediately go down the mountain and ask what the hell Zhang Feng was trying to do. When Zhang Sun heard this, he immediately got up from the stool and ran off. Cheng Chumo and the others were so angry that they cried out that the heavens were unfair. Zhang Sun went down the mountain, got a horse, and galloped towards Chang'an City. Along the way, he saw people from the military camp. At this time, they were pulling large and thick lumber in an endless stream. They were lining up to transport it to Chang'an City. After asking around a little, Zhang Sun found out that these things were actually going to build a basketball court. What kind of thing is a basketball court? Zhang Sun was suspicious as he galloped. The closer he got to Chang'an City, the more people were talking about this. When he reached Chang'an City, the things that entered his ears were all about strengthening one's body, relaxing one's muscles and meridians to prolong one's life, and so on. He even heard some people talking about what kind of magical thing Zhang Feng from Tong Hui Fang had made. He could fly more than 10 feet high with a single jump. This made Zhang Sun even more confused. What was Feng Zi doing? Before he could go to Yanlai Lu to have some fun, Zhang Sun urged the date red horse to gallop into Tong Hui Fang. The originally sparsely populated Tong Hui Fang was now extremely crowded. Zhang Sun couldn't help but slow down. By the time he arrived at the entrance of Tong Hui Square, the place was already filled with commoners who wanted to join in the fun. There were also vehicles loaded with piles of wood. Even the roadside was filled with piles of wood. From afar, Zhang Sun saw a familiar face. He hastily called over one of Yu Qigong's soldiers. This soldier was once one of the stubborn ones in Chang'an. His father was a subordinate of Zhang Sun Wuji. There was once when they went too far and almost burned down Yanlai restaurant. When the Ministry of Works demanded an explanation, this kid took the initiative to take the blame for Zhang Sun Chong. Furthermore, Zhang Sun Chong was also very generous. With a drink, he bribed Yuchi Baolin and allowed him to enter the military camp. Now that they met again, the two of them sighed. However, Zhang Sun couldn't be bothered to ask about his well-being. Wouldn't it be fine if he invited him to Yanlai Lu to book a place for him after he was done? Let me ask you what is going on? As Zhang Sun spoke, he took out a cigarette from his bosom and handed it to the young man. The young man was too lazy to refuse. After taking out a lighter, he said, "I suggest you go and ask your brother." That kid was almost angered to death. Zhang Sun was even more curious. Why don't you tell him properly? However, the young man only chuckled and pointed at Yu Qigong's red nose. Your brother is really AF * king talent. See that? No blood on his blade. He didn't even appear, and he made this yaksha blush. Hehe. Zhang Sun Chong looked in the direction of his finger. He saw Yu Qigong with his hands on his hips and angrily shouting at the crowd while rubbing his nose. There was even a dog skin plaster stuck on his nose. That look was simply. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, Zhang Sun Chong threw the reins in his hand and hurried to the tavern where Zhang Feng was. And inside the tavern. At this moment, Zhang Feng could no longer see a trace of anger on his face. This made Li Chengqian and Yu Qiyu very puzzled. Li Chengqian couldn't help but ask curiously, "Could it be that you were faking it just now?" Zhang Feng lit a cigarette and placed his feet on the table, rocking the recliner. He pointed at his temple and said, "Think again. See if you've improved after being with me for so long." Li Chengqian was stunned when he heard that. A hint of surprise flashed across Yu Qiyuer's beautiful eyes in an instant. She couldn't understand Zhang Feng more and more, and the mysterious attraction on Zhang Feng was what attracted her the most. Especially after coming to Chang'an and hearing the things that Zhang Feng said and meeting Li Chengqian, Yu Qiyu wanted to get Zhang Feng even more. Otherwise, how could someone as handsome as Zhang Feng, who didn't have a wife for the time being, be Yanlai restaurant songstress and a young lady from a small family be Zhang Feng's wife? Were they even worthy? At this moment, Li Chengqian was frowning and smoking a cigarette. After wandering around the tavern for a long time, he said, "Fengzi, do you mean to attack Wei to rescue Zhao?" Yu Qiyu was stunned when she heard that. She couldn't help but ask, "Young Master Li, what do you mean by attacking Wei to rescue Zhao?" Of course, she didn't know. However, for Li Chengqian, who knew about Zhang Feng's plan to rescue India, he could still remember a little of it. After all, it had only been less than 10 days since that incident. Zhang Feng nodded, then shook his head. Not bad. That's a little interesting, but it still doesn't make sense. How is this attacking Wei to rescue Zhao? Li Chengqian's frown deepened when he heard that. As the crown prince, he was more anxious than anyone else, especially when Zhang Feng suddenly gave you a test without anyone noticing. He was even more anxious. However, at this moment, Zhang Feng said leisurely, "Think about what I did today and everything that happened since you heard about me talking about basketball. This is my test for you. If you complete it, I'll give you a big gift. If you can't answer it, your credits this year, hee hee." Chapter 897. Li Chengqian felt goosebumps all over his body when he heard that. What was that? It was a threat. It was a blatant threat. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He could only pull at his hair and squat at the entrance of the tavern. He leaned against the wall and sat on the ground, holding his head in pain. In his head, he connected all the things that Zhang Feng had done in the past few days to everything Zhang Feng had done after learning about the mid-autumn hunt. However, he really thought of something. Yu Qiyue was even more surprised. Over the past few days in Chang'an, she had already inquired about all the young masters of the aristocratic families in Chang, and from a stubborn person. She even knew the hobbies of the 4 great demon kings, what they were used to doing in their daily lives, and what businesses they owned. No one knew what she wanted to do. No one knew why she wanted to know all this. Her original goal was to get close to the crown prince. However, after knowing everything, she felt that Zhang Feng was too mysterious at the moment. People who were eager to prove themselves loved challenges. Especially someone as outstanding as her. Even the young masters of the aristocratic families in Jiangnan were controlled by her. She was tired after so many years. When she came to Chang'an again, she had fantasized that if Zhang Feng couldn't do it, she would go to the crown prince. However, it seemed that Zhang Feng had successfully attracted her. Seeing how Li Chengqian was tormented by Zhang Feng's words, Yu Qiyue couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng and ask, "Prince Zhang, what are you talking about?" Zhang Feng didn't dare to look at the vixen Yu Qiyue. However, when he suddenly heard her voice, he couldn't help but look over subconsciously. Looking at it this way, my goodness, it was simply asking for his life. Especially after the two of them had physical contact, Zhang Feng didn't know whether to sit or stand. At this moment, Li Chengqian, who was a wet blanket, suddenly slapped his thigh, waking Zhang Feng up. "I got it." "What did you get?" Yu Qiyue asked as she glared at Li Chengqian. Li Chengqian naturally did not notice the flirtatious atmosphere between the two of them. He said, "It's very simple. Feng Zi wants to expand the appeal of basketball, just like promoting those braised meat, bone-strengthening powder, cooperatives, and so on." Zhang Feng rubbed his nose and took over the awkwardness. He couldn't help but give Li Chengqian a thumbs up and said, "Not bad, continue." Seeing Zhang Feng praise him, Li Chengqian was very excited. He finally got it right. Seeing Zhang Feng ask again, he put on a scholarly air with his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't care about the unsightly behavior just now and said, "The reason why you flew into a rage at the entrance of the market square was because you wanted to tell everyone about the sturdiness and miraculous nature of this item, and at the same time, you wanted others to know about the preciousness of this ball? Only when you get angry with the people in Chang, and know how to cherish this thing. Only then will they know how difficult it is to obtain it, right?" After Li Chengqian finished speaking, he stared at Zhang Feng unwaveringly. This affirmation was very important to him. After all, he was the crown prince. If he hadn't learned anything from Zhang Feng after following him for so long, it would be embarrassing. Zhang Feng was also a little surprised. "Not bad. You can think of it so thoroughly. At least you're smarter than Du Dabing." Hearing Zhang Feng's praise, Li Chengqian suddenly felt a little embarrassed. However, Zhang Feng continued, "Since you already know, you should know what to do now, right?" This time, Li Chengqian was asked again. "What to do?" Zhang Feng felt a little stuffy. He knocked on the armrest of the recliner and said, "Do you still need to ask? Continue to preach to me about the awesomeness of basketball. Before the backboard is released tomorrow, we have to let more people know about this. Most importantly, we have to let the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights know about this. Only then will the mid-autumn hunt program between Chang'an University and White Deer College be recognized." Hearing this, Li Chengqian suddenly understood. He couldn't do anything else, but for this matter, he only needed to say a word. After settling this matter, Li Chengqian sat across from Zhang Feng and Yu Qiyue. Seeing that it was getting late, he pondered for a while before lighting the oil lamp. However, when the oil lamp was lit, Li Chengqian realized that Yu Qiyu and Zhang Feng were both staring at him. Li Chengqian couldn't help but realize something. He hurriedly said, "Well, I'll do it now." As he spoke, he was about to slip away. Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped him and said, "After this matter is settled, immediately inform Tai Niu and the other bastards to come down the mountain. Also, Hao Chujun, Ma Zhou, and the others, you have to participate in this matter. When the time comes, the mid-autumn hunt will depend on you." "You're planning to go with all of us?" Li Chengqian was a little flustered. If they went for the mid-autumn hunt, what competition did he have? How could the people from the Imperial College and the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights not know them? This identity, Zhang Feng said angrily. "Before the mid-autumn hunt, if you bastards lose to Hao Chujun and the others, you can prepare to pour moonlight night incense on the mountain for Lao Tzu." Hearing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly left. It was better to pour moonlight night incense than to expose his identity and be beaten up by his father and the Emperor Emeritus. Chapter 898. After Li Chengqian left, the room fell silent again. A lone lamp, a lone man and a lone woman. Zhang Feng's heartbeat quickened involuntarily. Although Yu Qiyu sat quietly by his side, her body fragrance still stimulated Zhang Feng's nerves. The moment he smelled her scent, Zhang Feng's mind involuntarily recalled the scene from yesterday. Slowly, Zhang Feng felt his body heat up. "Ahem, miss you. I'm really sorry to have made you sit here for so long. May I know the reason for your visit today?" Yu Qiyu looked at the gradually darkening sky outside and pursed her lips into a smile. "It's fine. Actually, you came today to see what the rumored basketball is. But now I've seen it. Well, it's getting late. Why don't you rest?" The moment he said that, Zhang Feng broke out in a cold sweat. His original intention was to urge Yu to go back as soon as the sky turned dark. But damn it, why did his words sound so different when his mouth was loose? Zhang Feng hurriedly explained. No. What I meant was that it's getting dark, and a lone man and woman are alone. No, what I meant was that you should go back. Zhang Feng was on the verge of tears. Why was his usual IQ offline now? What the hell was going on? Yu Qiyu had seen a lot of this. She covered her mouth and chuckled. "I thought Prince Zhang would ask you to stay, but it turns out that Prince Zhang doesn't like you that much?" Zhang Feng was about to break down because of Yu Qiyu's teasing. Damn it, she's not even afraid. What are you afraid of? If you don't eat meat that's delivered to your door, are you still a man? However, Zhang Feng's words told him that this woman was very dangerous. She was like a venomous snake, which made him very uncomfortable. Seeing that Zhang Feng was about done being teased, Yu Qiyu covered her mouth and laughed. "Prince Zhang, you don't have to be so conflicted." Yu Qiyu then asked, "What plans does Prince Zhang have for the future?" Seeing that Yu Qiyu had let him off the hook, Zhang Feng was somewhat disappointed, but he also heaved a sigh of relief. "As for the future, I haven't thought about that. Does Miss Yu have any good suggestions?" "I wouldn't call it a suggestion." Yu Qiyu's eyes flashed slightly. "However, doesn't Prince Zhang want to go up a bit? After all, regardless of Prince Zhang's attainments in poetry or other aspects, according to the laws of the Tang dynasty, although I don't dare to say that he's a Grand Duke, he's still a second-rank official." Zhang Feng's eyebrows twitched when he heard this. "Miss Yu, you're being too serious. Although this is my idea, I still need to take it one step at a time. Although these things happen to be similar to what His Majesty thinks, it's not good. If I bite off more than I can chew, it will only be difficult for me in the future. Therefore, it's better for me to live a carefree life like this." What was this demon trying to do? Was she trying to pry into his background? Although Zhang Feng also wanted to be the emperor, that position was easy to sit on. However, he was just a young brat without any foundation or connections. If he wanted to join someone else's huge team of interests, he was simply courting death. Yu Qiyu seemed to have expected Zhang Feng's answer. She nodded and said, "The world is so big. Does Prince Zhang intend to lean towards one? This lady has heard that Prince Zhang has made some metal boat. I also heard that Prince Zhang said that on the other side of the distant sea, there's a large area of wilderness. This girl's ambition was not small. Zhang Feng couldn't help but become vigilant. If Zhang Feng was really the kind of guy who was blinded by lard and only thought about women, then Zhang Feng would be on the right track at this moment. However, Zhang Feng was not that kind of person. Therefore, Zhang Feng only smiled and interrupted Yuqiyu. I didn't expect that a woman like Miss Yu would be so interested in this matter. This is the blessing of my Tang dynasty. When my metal boat is completed one day, if Miss Yu is interested, why don't we go overseas and have a look together? Disappointment flashed in Yuchi Yuer's eyes, but she quickly concealed it. She smiled and nodded. That's for sure. After that, the two of them continued to chat. Yuchi Yuer could see that Zhang Feng was already wary of her and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. She was too hasty. Only then did she ease the atmosphere and use her charm to seduce Zhang Feng. Just as she was about to die, the sound of horse hooves made Yuchi leave with a smile. After Yuchi left, the smile on Zhang Feng's face disappeared without a trace. Such an ambitious person, if she were a man, could really become a close friend. However, such a person was also extremely dangerous. You couldn't be sure when she would stab you in the back. However, this was easy to guard against. However, Zhang Feng really couldn't imagine what would happen to Yu Yuer. He couldn't help but sigh. Beautiful women are all mother * king poison. Yo, you brat, this is awesome. When are you going to attend the wedding banquet? Zhang Sun Chong walked in with a smile and an expression of, you know what I mean. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only roll his eyes. Why are you here? Zhang Sun picked up a cup of tea that no one had drunk before and said as he drank, Mr. Bashi and the others know that you're causing trouble and are a little angry, so they asked me to come down and ask. However, you're actually eating secretly? When Lao Tzu invited you to Yen Lai restaurant, you pretended to be a grandson. Now, hearing this, Zhang Feng flew into a rage out of humiliation. Bastard! Chapter 899. Zhang Feng didn't want to talk about that woman anymore. However, his mind was full of Yuchi Yuer, which made Zhang Feng even more irritated. You've seen what happened. That's what happened. As for how you want to explain it, that's your problem. However, you can rest assured that they will be watching the game. If I'm not wrong, Li Qian's men should have already returned to the mountain. So since you're here, don't leave. I'll show you what basketball is tomorrow. Seeing that Zhang Feng wasn't willing to explain and that Li Changqian had already sent people to the mountain, Zhang Sun was naturally eager to stay. After all, he had been lusting after the ladies from Swallow Descent restaurant during his days on the mountain. Seeing that Zhang Feng wasn't interested, Zhang Sun got ready to leave. However, after getting up, Zhang Sun asked again, Fengzi, are you sure nothing happened between you and Yu-er? Seeing that Zhang Feng was about to kill someone, Zhang Sun hurriedly shut his mouth. However, he couldn't help but say, let me give you a piece of advice as a brother. You can play with this woman, but don't ever take her seriously. This woman isn't simple. As a brother, this is all I can tell you. After saying that, Zhang Sun slipped away. How could Zhang Feng not know about this? However, he didn't know what kind of bewitching potion he had been fed, but his mind was filled with this woman. He didn't know if this was old Yu's arrangement or if there was something wrong with this woman. If it was old Yu, then it shouldn't be. Otherwise, old Yu would have already taken Yu away by force yesterday. He wouldn't have needed to ask him and would have strongly recommended Yuchi Yu. During this period, Buggy wasn't the first person to remind him that this woman wasn't simple. He wasn't stupid either, but human nature was just that annoying. Even though he knew that Yuchi Yu might be a pit of fire, Zhang Feng still wanted to take a look at this pit of fire to see what was inside. Perhaps this was the nature of servility. Sigh. F***ck your love. Zhang Feng couldn't help but raise his head and let out a long sigh. Although he had long fantasized about picking up the prettiest girls, the three women around him were all top-notch. As for Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao, everyone was optimistic about them. However, Zhang Feng felt that it was so easy to get, so boring. One was as cold as a goddess, while the other was as pure as the little girl next door. As for this Yu, who could charm all living things, she actually made his heart stir. However, someone was trying to dissuade him. This woman might be a poisonous snake. The more he tried to dissuade her, the more Zhang Feng wanted to approach the snake. He wanted to see what she wanted to do. Thinking about this, Zhang Feng actually fell asleep on the recliner. Zhang Feng was asleep. However, Yu Qigong wasn't so lucky. At this time, he was arguing with a group of imperial guards in a corner of the East Market. At this time, the Tang dynasty hadn't entered the era where people didn't close their doors at night, so there was still a curfew. Once the hour passed, a large number of imperial guards and city guards were roaming the streets and alleys of Chang'an. If you didn't go home after being warned 3 times, you would be sent to the Ministry of Justice's prison to lie dead for 3 days. At this time, Yu Qigong, who was desperately rushing to finish the construction, encountered a group of people who didn't care about their lives. They blocked everyone's way with red faces and thick necks. Even the city guards and imperial guards drew their Modeo swords from their waists. Yu Qigong's subordinates, who were all people who had seen blood on the battlefield, couldn't help but laugh when they saw this. At this time, they didn't carry any weapons and were even wearing the clothes of ordinary people. However, the moment these people drew their Modeo swords, everyone instantly looked at the group of new recruits with half smiles. The new military training of half a month had already made them full of anger. Now, they finally found an outlet to vent. What's going on? At this time, Yu Qigong rushed over on a big horse and stared at the imperial guard who drew his Modeo swords and asked. When the imperial guard saw that the person in charge was riding a horse in the middle of the night, he couldn't help but become angrier. Very well. Old man, don't you know that after the curfew, except for the Duke and the Emperor, no one is allowed to stay on the streets, let alone ride a horse? Men, tie this old bastard up for me. However, before they could do anything, Yu Qigong was so angry that his beard was about to stand up. He waved his hand, and the group of soldiers who were watching the show instantly pounced on him like hungry wolves. The imperial guards and city guards had never seen this kind of person before. They were so frightened that they turned pale. Especially the leader of the group. After seeing this, the first thing he did was not to question. Instead, he drew a suona from his waist and hurriedly blew into it. Rebellion, rebellion, you dare to rebel? Just wait. Wait for Lao Tzu to cut you into pieces. Oh? You're still calling for help? Yu Qigong was so angry that he laughed. He waved his hand to stop his subordinates, lit a cigarette, and sat on the horse to wait. When the sound of the lock fell, as if it was a signal, the quiet streets of Chang'an City were filled with waves of rapid locking sounds. In less than a cup of tea's time, the entire East Market was surrounded. At this moment, a man who looked like a general riding on a horse and wearing armor slowly urged his warhorse to come over. As for the squad leader, he hurriedly stepped forward and recounted all of Yu Qigong's crimes in an exaggerated manner. However, the soldiers under Yu Qigong couldn't help but laugh when they saw the general clearly. Chapter 900. The general had a cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth. After hearing the special signal from his captain, he hurried over with his men. Chang'an was not peaceful during this period of time. Basically, spies from India, Turks, and even the western regions were found every day. This made all the Chang'an guards jittery for a moment. Originally, after the damned dean of White Deer College stirred up some trouble in Chang'an City, the spies became more active. This made all the guards of Chang'an City complain incessantly. Tonight, he was finally ready to go home for a drink, but the sound of the horn angered him so much that he rushed over with his spear on his horse without even taking off his armor. However, when he got closer, although he could not see the face of the person riding the horse clearly, he could tell that they were a group of commoners from the way they dressed. He could not help but explode with anger. A group of dogs. How dare they court death in the middle of the night? However, when he noticed that the corner of Yu Qigong's mouth was flashing and white smoke was blowing out like him, he felt that something was amiss. This was a cigarette. In Chang'an, there were only a handful of people who could afford to smoke cigarettes, except for the Grand Duke's mansions and the Imperial Palace. Even if they could get a little of it, who would not treat it like a treasure? The general could not help but be a little cautious. Hey, you over there, tell me your name. The general did not dare to be careless. He stopped when he was 5 feet away from Yu Qigong. At this moment, Yu Qigong did not say anything, but a soldier beside Yu Qigong joked, I'm talking about punishment porridge. He even dared to beat up your father. Do you want to die? The general's expression changed drastically. Punishment porridge. That was his name. He was also Chang Yaojin's eldest son and Cheng Chimo's elder brother. Punishment Porridge was shocked to hear that from this group of unruly commoners. He hurriedly urged his horse forward to take a look and could not help but gasp. In Chang'an City, other than the two in the imperial palace, who could control his father? That was the man in front of him. He couldn't help but urge his horse forward. He was no longer as imposing as before. With his head drooping, he dismounted from his horse and walked to Yu Qigong's side. He hurriedly took out a cigarette from his bosom and lowered it to his lips. "No, it's Uncle Yu. Please forgive me. It's all my nephew's fault for being blind and blocking the way." All right. Since you're the one who came, Lao Tzu won't lower himself to your level. You can go back and fight on your own. Didn't that blockhead tell you what I'm going to do?" Punishment Porridge's mouth twitched. He hurriedly said, "When father came home, little nephew was on a mission." "He hasn't come home yet." "Oh." Yu Qigong made an "oh" sound and instantly lost interest. He patted Punishing Porridge's head and said, "Your subordinates are not bad, but they are a little timid. They are all a bunch of cowards. When you are free, bring them to the barracks and let my son teach them a lesson." As he spoke, Yu Qigong yawned and left. Punishing Porridge quickly said, "Uncle Yu, take care." This, Punishment Porridge's subordinates were instantly dumbfounded. After Yu Qigong left, Yu Qigong's subordinates let go of Punishing Porridge's subordinates and minded their own business. Punishment Porridge wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and waved his hand to let his subordinates act as if they didn't see anything and do what they were supposed to do. This made the patrolling soldiers even more curious. However, even the eldest son of Duke Luo didn't dare to offend someone and had to pretend to be a grandson to save his life. How could they afford to offend someone like that? It wasn't just here. At this time, under the night sky of Chang'an City, from Enlu House and the Navy training ground beside Longsho Canal behind Enlu House, there was an uproar everywhere. Someone dismantled an entire broken ship. Then, for the purpose of dismantling it, he called over countless people who knew a little about carpentry, and arranged them neatly according to Zhang Feng's blueprint in the marine workshop. Then, groups of soldiers carried these wooden planks and shuttled through the streets and alleys of Chang'an City. As the night deepened, new and novel things were constantly emerging in every neighborhood of Chang'an City. As the sun slowly rose in the east, the people who had waited for a night couldn't wait to go out of their houses. But in the next moment, everyone was shocked by the things in front of them. Basically, there were 1 or 2 basketball courts on every street. The basketball courts were very simple. The streets of Chang'an City were basically left behind from the previous dynasty. They were all paved with large bluestones. Although some places were damaged and bumpy, in general, they were still flat. And these bowl-sized wooden pillars were erected in this relatively flat place. In the wooden manner, a square object was drawn on a wooden board. Under this object, there was a big, dark iron ring. Translator, WQL Editor. Alim on the wooden board, there was a square object drawn with ink. Under this object, there was a big, dark iron ring. After seeing this thing, everyone couldn't help but exclaim. Could it be that this thing is a basketball court? Chapter 901. The sky brightened a little. Cheng Chimo and the others got up early and rushed to Chang'an City on horseback. Hao Chu-jun and the others were the most confused among them. They only knew that the dean was calling them. But they had no idea what he was calling them to do. Even when they asked Cheng Chimo and the others, they got nothing except rolling their eyes. Thus, they decided not to ask any further. They hurriedly entered Chang'an City on horseback. It was the first time they came to Zhang Feng's tavern, but they had been looking forward to it for a long time. But they had never been here before. They stood at the entrance of Tonghui Square and looked at the strangely shaped backboard. They couldn't help but feel scared. This was what they were going to represent Chang, and University and White Deer College to participate in the mid-autumn hunt. They were not prepared at all. They just looked at it for a while and then hurriedly followed Cheng Chimo and the others to the entrance of Uli Tavern. As soon as they got off the horse, Cheng Chimo began to shout loudly. It was hard for them not to know that this was Zhang Feng's tavern. After roaring for a while, Zhang Feng opened the door in a daze. After seeing the few people, he yawned and pointed inside the tavern. Since you're here, don't stay idle. Boil water, I want to wash up. They were stunned. Chung Chumo glared at them. Why are you standing there? Are you waiting for Fengzi to make ready-made dishes for you? I'm talking about you. Zhang Feng lifted the curtain and was about to enter the bedroom. He pointed at Chung Chumo and then entered the bedroom. Chung Chumo glared at them indifferently. They didn't dare to say anything. In a flurry, some carried water, some cleaned up the house. 2 hours later. Only then did Zhang Feng appear in the brand new tavern. Looking at the people who were standing upright, he said, "Today's breakfast, go and settle it yourselves. As for today's training, all of you better open your eyes wide. Also, remember that basketball is played with your hands. If anyone dares to kick it with their feet, I'll break their legs and expel them from the White Deer Institute. Especially you, Chen Tinyu. You guys had better restrain yourselves. Don't let me catch you." Chung Chumo's face was instantly filled with distress. "Fengzi, tell me, how do we do this thing?" The news of what had happened at the entrance of the market yesterday had spread all over the mountain before the sky had turned dark. No one knew what to do with that magical thing. Who would dare to make something that could shoot up to 70 to 80 feet high with a single slap? Zhang Feng thought about it. This was indeed a problem. It was a problem. He couldn't help but say, "Eat first. I'll teach you guys for a day. All right, go to Swallow Descent restaurant and shout at Buggy. If he can't get up today, then don't come." Zhang Feng wanted to instruct everyone to cook, but when he looked at the crowd, who would dare to let them do it? At this moment, a voice rang out from the market entrance that instantly woke Zhang Feng up. "Young masters, you haven't eaten yet, right? This servant knows that Prince Zhang has something important to do with you young masters today, so this servant has prepared some food. I hope that you young masters will kindly accept it." Yuchi Yuer had come. Today, she had brought along 3 servant girls and 3 servants from the Yuchi family. At this moment, each of them was carrying a large box of food. However, when she saw Chung Chumo and the others, her expression unconsciously became flustered. Zhang Feng wanted to say something, but when he saw that the people at the door were all looking at Yu Yuer in a daze, what could he say? He only stood up and cupped his fists. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Mississippi." Yuchi Yuer was very tactful. After putting down the food box, she left. It was as if she already knew that Zhang Feng didn't want to cook. She also knew that Zhang Feng was very busy today. Like a virtuous wife, she left after finishing what she was supposed to do. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. In the end, Zhang Feng only shook his head and said, "Eat. After eating, we'll start." The food in the box was very sumptuous. They were all things that Zhang Feng was familiar with. These things were all from him, so how could he not know? The food was very sumptuous, and they were all things that Zhang Feng recognized. After taking a closer look at the food box, he realized that these were all from his own store. The bamboo basket handle of the food box had the words, "Chong and Restaurant, White Deer College Branch 37, written on it. How could Zhang Feng not recognize it? After eating extremely gloomily, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Let's go." The basketball court in Tonghui Fang was already filled with commoners who were watching the show. Everyone knew what happened last night, but they were all commoners. Who would dare to go out in the middle of the night? At most, they would just lean against the door and watch. Only this morning could they come out to take a look. Once they saw this guy, everyone wanted to see what Zhang Feng was going to do today. "They're here. Look, they're here." At this moment, at the entrance of Tonghui Lane, there was a sudden burst of excited shouts. Instantly, everyone turned around and looked behind them. They saw a group of handsome young men wearing sky-blue robes with the words White Deer College embroidered on the chest striding over. In an instant, the women in the crowd burst into a burst of starry-eyed exclamations. "Oh my God, this!" Chapter 902. Not only the onlookers, but even the women and the men with stubble on their faces were dumbfounded when they saw Zhang Feng and the others. Zhang Feng did not look sideways. He kept hitting the basketball and walked forward without looking sideways. At this time, Zhang Feng was thinking about how to quickly train these guys. As for Chung Chumo and the others behind him, they were even more shocked. Since when had they ever made anyone show such an expression? Most of the time when the people saw them they were afraid. At this time, they could not help but copy Zhang Feng's posture. They stood straight as if they were going to the battlefield. They followed Zhang Feng closely with a cold face. As for Zhou Liji and the others, they were a little bit worse. After all, they had not seen such a big scene. At this time, when they encountered such a situation, they could not help but be a little confused. Although they were a little disorderly, the onlookers screamed again and again. Chung Chumo could not help but be angry. He grinned and stared at the fat woman who screamed the loudest and laughed. In an instant, that woman stopped laughing. It was as if nothing had happened. She looked around and cheered again under the ridicule of the woman next to her. Chung Chumo was so angry that he glared at the people behind him. You are so scared of such a small scene. What kind of future do you have? All of you better King be well. While talking, the onlookers took the initiative to open a path and came to the basketball court. Niu Weili had been waiting there with a large group of government runners. He seemed to have known that Zhang Feng was going to come here. A big table was set up on the side of the basketball court. The table was full of jars and jars. There were even all kinds of meat dishes and drinks bought from Chang'an restaurant. Niu Weili immediately greeted Zhang Feng when he saw him. Ayaya brother, you're finally here. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. Lord Niu, you are. Niu Weili pulled Zhang Feng to sit at the table and said, I heard yesterday that you were going to prepare for the mid-autumn hunt. I have nothing to help you with, so I prepared some drinks for you to drink when you are tired. Zhang Feng was speechless. He cupped his fist and said, Then I have to thank you, Lord Niu. But Lord Niu, I have something to ask you later. You can go do it first. I will send someone to find you after this. When Niu Weili heard this, he was so excited that he almost knelt down in front of Zhang Feng. He waved his hands and said, I'm not in a hurry, I'm not in a hurry. There's nothing to do in the magistrate court today, so I might as well take a leave. Ha ha ha, that's great. Lord Ox, please do as you wish. Little brother will be busy first. Zhang Feng saw that he couldn't drive Niu Weili away, so he didn't. He cupped his fist and walked into the basketball court. Li Chengqian and the others were still standing straight on the basketball court, as if they were being watched by others. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Zhang Feng. When Zhang Feng entered the court, Niu Weili's voice immediately became sharp. Silence! Silence! Shut the *CK up. Whoever dares to disturb Prince Zhang is going against the Chang'an local government. No one will have a good time in the future. After the 3 roars, all the onlookers gradually quieted down. They were not afraid of Niu Weili's threat, but most importantly, they did not dare to disturb Zhang Feng. Otherwise, wouldn't they be scolded to death if their own people decided to enroll in the academy, or if the news about this were to spread? It was because they had harmed Zhang Feng that the White Deer College's quota for the imperial examination 3 years later was taken away. There was a quota for the imperial examination every year. As for the mid-autumn hunt, if one fell behind in the mid-autumn hunt every year, 10 people would be taken away. 3 years. If it was 3 years in a row, as long as one was thick-skinned enough and didn't think it was shameful enough, one could give it a try. Therefore, every academy regarded the spring hunt and the mid-autumn hunt as the most important event of the academy. Even the birth of a son by a concubine wasn't as important as this. The honor of the entire academy was all here. At this moment, among the crowd, the people from the Imperial College had already squatted at the side and watched coldly. They didn't know what this thing that was bragging about was, but looking at its posture now, it really looked like it. The people from the Imperial College couldn't help but frown slightly. While they were frowning and discussing, Zhang Feng moved. Zhang Feng patted the basketball as he said, Today, I will only demonstrate it 3 times. After that, each of you will have to practice dribbling. Niu Pihuang will bring 4 basketballs later. When the time comes, there will be 2 teams. Each team will have 2 balls and you will practice dribbling at the same time. 3 days. I will only give you 3 days. If you guys still can't familiarize yourself with dribbling within 3 days, then get lost. Zhang Feng's half-threat was indeed very effective. After all, this method was really effective against a wretched person like Chung Chumo. At this moment, Li Chengqian asked, Fengzi, this thing is just padding? Everyone, including the onlookers, had suspicious expressions on their faces. This thing could strengthen the body? Could it prolong life? Could it? When Zhang Feng heard this he said, I said that I will only demonstrate it 3 times. Now look carefully. For the first time, I will only demonstrate the entire movement and flow of the basketball. As for how much you can learn after that, it will depend on your luck. Chapter 903. Zhang Feng didn't have much hope that these people would be able to fully familiarize themselves with the game. After all, basketball wasn't something that could be learned overnight. Even for Zhang Feng, it took him more than 10 years to learn from primary school, high school, and then university. He even skipped dating to play basketball. Only then was he able to compete with the old man in basketball. As for the people from Imperial College who were watching, Zhang Feng didn't care about them at all. Zhang Feng knew why Niu Weili insisted on staying. It was undoubtedly because he was afraid that the people from Imperial College would cause trouble. Therefore, he stayed behind to keep the situation under control. However, was Zhang Feng afraid? Who was he afraid of? At this moment, he couldn't wait for those people to cause trouble. When the time came, he could submit a written complaint. Then, he wouldn't have to put in so much effort to play basketball this time. On the court, Zhang Feng lowered his head and looked at the basketball in his hand. Then, he looked at the court and frowned slightly. Lord Niu, did you bring ink? Brother, what do you want that for? Niu Weili asked hurriedly. The onlookers widened their eyes. Zhang Feng pointed at the court. He wanted to explain but gave up after thinking about it. I'll have to trouble Lord Niu to find it for me. You'll know later. Here. Someone, bring me a brush and ink. Niu Weili didn't hesitate. He waved his hand and someone brought a brush, ink, paper, and an inkstone to Zhang Feng. However, Zhang Feng glanced at the inkstone and said, I'm talking about a big bucket of ink. Ha! This. Wait a moment. I'll go personally. Niu Weili was stunned for a moment. He stroked his beard and thought about it. Then, he hurriedly left. Zhang Feng had no choice but to use a brush to draw a center line and a three-point line on the bluestone bricks. After explaining the rules of these things in detail, he said, Everyone, watch carefully. After that, Zhang Feng stood under a backboard. He lightly tapped the basketball on the ground and ran out quickly. He passed the ball and then dribbled. He shuttled back and forth between Chang Chimo and the others. His movements were extremely graceful. This caused the surrounding commoners to cry out in alarm. Among the crowd, a middle-aged man who smelled like Chinese medicine watched Zhang Feng's actions. He squinted his eyes and stared at Zhang Feng for a long time. Then, he hurriedly took out an ancient book and started to read it. Then he couldn't help but exclaim, I got it! Ha ha ha, I finally know the secret of Prince Zhang's basketball. Hearing this, the onlookers couldn't help but be shocked. They hurriedly looked at the doctor. When they saw that he was just a passing doctor, they couldn't help but roll their eyes and continue to watch Zhang Feng's handsome movements. When the doctor saw this, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He quickly held up a medical book and said, Look, this medical book once said that this thing promotes blood circulation, activates blood circulation, and relaxes tendons. Take a look at this. What is this? This is the 5 Animal Frolics technique written by the divine Dr. Hua Tuo. You all know about the 5 Animal Frolics technique, right? This is an ancient book. At this point, the crowd was slowly attracted to the doctor. Doctor, which one do you think is better? Prince Zhang's basketball or the 5 Animal Frolics technique? The ancients didn't care about good or bad. They just wanted to know which one was better. After all, only those who could afford the book and those from the aristocratic families had the leisure to play with the 5 Animal Frolics technique. For old farmers like them, who dealt with the bankers all day long, how could they have the time to play with this? If they hadn't heard that Prince Zhang's game could not only be played by everyone, but also paid for and promised, they wouldn't be bothered to play with it. However, at this time, after seeing Zhang Feng's elegant movements, the crowd's thoughts changed. If my son, or even I, went to play, how many women would be charmed to death? However, at this time, when they heard someone mention the divine medicine god Hua Tuo, they couldn't help but be a little interested. Didn't Prince Zhang's basketball make Zhang Feng want everyone to live longer? Seeing that someone finally responded, the passing doctor excitedly held up the 5 Animal Frolics technique in his hand and said, Look, this is the 5 Animal Frolics technique. However, compared to the one shown by Prince Zhang, I think the one in Prince Zhang's hand is better. Look at his every movement. Doesn't it look like he's practicing martial arts? His hands, eyes, nose, feet, and waist. Which one hasn't he used? This has already achieved the effect of promoting blood circulation in medicine. But that's not the most amazing thing. The most amazing thing is that young Master Zhang Feng can actually make people's hearts move at will, and he even adds some intelligence. In this way, the 5 animal frolics, when compared to his basketball, is simply, the student has surpassed the master. He didn't dare to say anything. After all, Hua Tuo was the ancestor of all doctors. If he dared to say anything, he wouldn't be able to practice medicine until tomorrow. How could he be worthy of deceiving his master and destroying his ancestors? Chapter 904. At least half of the people in Chang'an were watching. After all, basketball had been rumored to be magical. Who didn't want to see for themselves whether it was true or not? At this time, the words of the doctor seemed to have grown wings and spread rapidly among the people. It was even spreading in the palace at this time. In the imperial study, Li Shimin was reviewing memorials and government affairs. At this time, Empress Zhang Sun and Li Tai slowly walked into the imperial study. When Li Shimin came back to his senses, Zhang Sun Wu Go and Li Tai greeted. Then, Empress Zhang Sun put a bowl of nutritious porridge mixed with bone-strengthening powder in front of Li Shimin. Li Shimin said happily, "It's rare for Guanyin maid to remember me." "Second brother, what are you talking about? Compared to Zhang Feng and Prince Zhang, it's a far cry." Li Shimin laughed when he heard this. He drank the porridge and patted the soft couch to let Empress Zhang Sun and Li Tai sit on the dragon throne. Then he said, "Speaking of which, this kid is teaching basketball in Chang'an City today. I don't know how it's going. I really want to take you to see it." "Father, when I and Mother first came here, the palace maids and eunuchs were everywhere in the palace. They said that the things that brother learned were even better than the 5 animal frolics written by medical sage Hua." Li Tai, who was 7 or 8 years old, sat between Li Shimin and Zhang Sun Wugo. He then thought for a moment and said, "However, I have learned it before, and have also seen father perform the 5 animal frolics. This is truly a gift from the heavens, so I believe that this is a mistake made by the people of the world." Li Shimin and Zhang Sun Wugo couldn't help but laugh when they heard this. "Qing Ke, who did you hear this from?" "The people from the Ministry of Works said it." Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wugo patted Li Tai's head and said, "Qing Ke, if those were just rumors, do you think your imperial father would let your imperial brother learn it?" When Li Tai heard this, he frowned and pouted. "Then Qing Ke, also wants to learn it. Once she learns it, she will only show it to imperial father and imperial mother." All right. When you grow a little older, I'll let you go." Li Shimin dotingly patted Li Tai's head, then signaled Xiao Gizi to bring Li Tai out to play. "Guanyin maid, why don't you come out with me to take a look?" Li Shimin couldn't sit still anymore. It was actually something that happened in the morning. How long had it been? It was only noon, yet it had already spread to the palace. How could this be? This was simply faster than anything else. Even the news of the retired emperor's birthday. Of course, Li Shimin knew about the bone-strengthening powder. As for this so-called basketball, Li Shimin was really looking forward to seeing if it was really as the rumors said. Zhang Feng never did such fake things. However, even so, Li Shimin still couldn't sit still. He wanted to see it for himself. Seeing it with his own eyes was the most important thing. It was just like the last time when Ouyang Sun went up the mountain. He was surrounded by stubborn people like Cheng Chumo. If things went on like this for a long time, it was just like what Zhang Feng had said. One would be stained by the company one kept. Zhang Sun Wugo was a little hesitant. Although she had long wanted to go out for a walk, she had to manage the huge harem. How could she just leave like that? Just as Zhang Sun Wugo was hesitating, how could Li Shimin not see through her thoughts? He laughed and put his arm around her shoulder. "Come, prepare the palanquin for us to leave the palace." As Li Shimin left the palace, the Yuqi family, the Niu family, and the others couldn't sit still. Even those who were a little familiar with Zhang Feng all went to Tong Hui Fang. At this time, Zhang Feng had already lost count of how many times he had played the basketball. When the basketball spun 3 times on the basket and finally fell into the basket, Zhang Feng sat down on the basketball and panted without caring about his image. How is it? Have you remembered it? At the beginning, he said that he would only show it once. However, when he really played, Zhang Feng instantly recalled all kinds of things from his previous life. This memory couldn't stop. 3-point hurdles. Smashing the board, wiping the sides, playing over and over again. The things in his memory became clearer and clearer. At this time, looking around, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little lonely. Cheng Chumo's legs had been standing for a long time. A whole 2 hours. Zhang Feng played for a whole 2 hours. Not to mention Cheng Chumo, even Li Chengqian and all the onlookers were dying of envy. Seeing Zhang Feng speak, several people impatiently surrounded him. Fengzi, don't worry. This thing is too simple. We've already seen it. Who told you to dawdle for 2 hours? You should have let your brothers come up long ago. Yes. Get up. Don't sit on the ball. Give it to me. Several people helped Zhang Feng up without any explanation. Then, they dragged him to the bench and threw him to Niu Weili. Then, Cheng Chumo couldn't wait to hold the basketball and weigh it. Hey! This thing, isn't it could you? While speaking, Cheng Chumo subconsciously kicked out. Bang! Chapter 905. The basketball drew a beautiful parabola and quickly flew toward the onlookers. As the basketball flew out, the crowd could not help but burst into exclamations. F***CK. This young man is too reckless. Is this ball really something from the sky? How did it fly up to the sky with a kick? Who the F***CK knows? But now it seems that the effect of prolonging one's life is real. Niu Weili naturally knew what happened here yesterday. Seeing Cheng Chumo kick the ball away, he could not help but turn pale with fright. Quick! Someone come and get Prince Zhang back. No one is allowed to touch the ball. Niu Weili, the little county magistrate at this time, played his role of seduction and power. After a few roars, basically no one dared to move. They stared blankly at the basketball. After a parabola, it hit a person's head. That person touched the place where he was hit excitedly and kowtowed. In this way, it was instantly a mess. Although no one touched it, they sent their heads to be hit by the ball. After a lot of effort, the basketball finally returned to Zhang Feng's hands. At this time, Zhang Feng's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. Looking at Cheng Chumo's face full of ridicule, he said, I'm going to set a few rules now. If anyone dares to throw the ball indiscriminately, kick it indiscriminately, or damage the basketball, no matter who it is, I, Zhang Feng, will not give him a basketball in the future. You guys also supervise me. If anyone dares to kick or smash the ball, catch them and send them directly. Did you hear that? What is this good thing? This is a good thing that Prince Zhang asked for from the heavens with great difficulty. It's something that will help us live a good life. If anyone dares to mess around, I'll give him 30 strokes of the paddle first. Niu Weili saw that Zhang Feng was angry and hurriedly took over the topic. He could not help but say nothing. It was not like everything had to go through his hands. It would be strange if he was tired to death. Well, Fengzi, I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that this thing is exactly the same as could you, so I couldn't help but kick it. Seeing that Zhang Feng was angry, Li Chengqian hurriedly explained what had happened yesterday to the others. At this time, Cheng Chumo finally knew that he had stirred up trouble and hurried forward. Seeing this, Zhang Feng could not say anything. He waved his hand and said, For your team, Li Gan will be the leader. Ma Zhou, you will be the leader of Hao Chujuan's team. Of course, the leader position will be given to whoever trains well and learns fast. For this hunt, we will choose between the 2 leaders. When Zhang Feng said this, Hao Chujun, Ma Zhou, Li Chengqian, and the others instantly exploded. Although Li Chengqian and the others didn't care about a small captain, what was this? This is a matter of face. Then, Zhang Feng waved his hand, and several people scrambled to get on the court. According to the rules set by Zhang Feng, they slowly thought about it. Seeing that everything was like a child playing with a rubber ball, but it finally settled down, Zhang Feng heaved a deep sigh of relief. Originally, Zhang Feng really didn't think of setting these rules. However, it was really like the old saying that nothing could be accomplished without rules. Under his and Niu Weili's words, it was really effective. This seemed to be the servility in the bones of the people in this era. If you let them go and let them play, who knows what kind of trouble they might cause. But now the rules were set. Everyone stared with their eyes wide open and looked seriously at the people in the field, imitating them. Seeing this, Zhang Feng thought for a while, then looked at Niu Weili who was sitting at the side and asked, "Master Niu." Seeing that Zhang Feng called, Niu Weili hurriedly responded. Zhang Feng continued, "I have something that you need to do for me immediately." Seeing this, Niu Weili said seriously, "It's about this basketball, right? Don't worry, as long as I can do it, I will definitely do it for you." "It's done." Hearing this, Zhang Feng took out a piece of white paper from his arms and said, "This has what I need. From now on, I will have to trouble Master Niu to help me pay attention to the merchants in Lingnan. As long as you see what is written on the paper, buy it for me regardless of the price. Of course, regarding this basketball, Master Niu will also pay more attention to it. After all, this is made by us two brothers." With a big hat on his head, Niu Weili instantly smiled until his mouth was about to split into two halves. He didn't dare to have any thoughts about the basketball. After all, this thing was made by Zhang Feng. Everyone knew that. However, if this was handed to him, Niu Weili seemed to feel that the hat on his head was rising at this time. "Ayaya, brother, what do you want me to say? This matter is just a matter of a sentence. Look at you." Zhang Feng smiled faintly, took a sip of beer and said, "Don't worry, there is enough oil in this. I'm going to move to a rubber factory in Shao Mountain, and the raw materials for this thing are the same as the raw materials for the basketball. However, the raw materials for this thing are in Lingnan Road. I don't have much time to do this thing now, so I will need your help in purchasing the raw materials." Chapter 906. Zhang Feng sat there for another 4 hours before he slowly walked away. Basketball was simple. As long as one grasped how to operate the basketball, as long as there were no accidents, they would be able to master the game after 3 days of training. The mid-autumn hunt this time was basically stable. However, there was still one thing missing. Zhang Feng had no choice but to do it himself. When he entrusted Niu Weili with the task of finding the rubber, Niu Weili immediately sent someone to call the market's broker. The broker looked through the Lingnan merchants in Chang'an today and recently and found something. Therefore, Zhang Feng waited for more than 4 hours. When he finally managed to squeeze out of Tong Huifang, he instantly felt that his ears were much quieter. Although there was still a buzzing sound, it was much better than before. Zhang Feng lit a cigarette happily and sat at a fermented glutinous rice wine stall at the entrance of Fadong City, slowly drinking fermented glutinous rice wine. After 3 bowls of glutinous rice wine dumplings, Zhang Feng saw the Lingnan merchant in green and brown clothes that the broker had mentioned. He was walking into the market listlessly. After the merchant set up the stall, Zhang Feng pretended as if nothing had happened and slowly walked forward with his hands crossed. Kicking the black rubber material with the tip of his foot, Zhang Feng asked, "What is this thing?" The merchant seemed to be used to it when he heard someone asking. He changed his posture from leaning on the basket to lying on a linen cloth. He did not even lift his eyelids as he said, 100 copper coins for 1 piece. Choose what you want." Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but feel a little surprised. He remembered that the 3 pieces of rubber last time cost 30 copper coins. Why was it so expensive? "Shopkeeper, can you tell me what this thing is? Why doesn't it look like jade? Why is it so expensive? Are you trying to trick me?" At first, the merchant seemed to want to ignore Zhang Feng, but seeing that Zhang Feng was actually arguing, he couldn't help but roll his eyes and say, "Little kid, what do you know? The last time someone came to the Tang dynasty, he also sold 3 pieces of resin the size of a human head and earned 30 copper coins. The resin I brought is of superior quality, much better than his." Indeed. This time, regardless of whether it was the degree of preservation or the color, the rubber was indeed different from the previous one. Zhang Feng couldn't help but chat with the shopkeeper again. He couldn't help but secretly praise the businessman from before. He was really king genius. After that group of businessmen returned from the Tang dynasty, they actually began to hype up rubber, and this man was the biggest victim. He bought all the rubber from that businessman with all his property. But when he came to the Tang dynasty, he was completely dumbfounded. Who the ck would want this thing? By the time he realized that he had been deceived, it was already too late. Now, he didn't even have food to eat, let alone the travel expenses back home. That was why he was so careless when Zhang Feng asked him earlier. He really didn't have any strength left. And this made Zhang Feng see a glimmer of hope. He turned around and went to the Chang'an Hotel not far away, got a plate of braised meat and a bowl of noodles, and put them in front of the man. The man was surprised at first, and then looked at Zhang Feng suspiciously. Seeing that Zhang Feng didn't mean any harm, he wolfed down the food. But when he ate, his snot and tears almost made Zhang Feng vomit. After finishing the meal, Zhang Feng pointed to the Chang'an Hotel and said, "Let's close the stall and talk about a big deal." "How about it?" The Lingnan merchant didn't even think about it. He closed the stall, wrapped it in linen, patted his butt, and followed Zhang Feng into the Chang'an Hotel. Now he was alone, and there were 10 carriages of resin that no one would want even if he gave it away. He didn't believe that this young man would deceive him. More importantly, what else could he be deceived about? Originally, the Chang'an Tavern did not entertain people who were not well dressed and smelled like a fox. However, after seeing Zhang Feng's waist token, the attitude of everyone in this branch changed 180 degrees in an instant. They all bowed and bent their knees. This made the Lingnan merchant feel flattered. The two sat down. Zhang Feng poured a cup of tea for the merchant, and then slowly said, "How much is this thing in your Lingnan?" "No one wants it. No one wants it even if it's rotten on the streets. Ding Duo just takes some back to burn when there's no firewood." After the Lingnan merchant finished speaking, he looked at Zhang Feng and said, "Does the young master like this thing?" He vaguely remembered. After Akamba went up, he said that a young man had bought this thing. Originally, this thing was brought to block the leaking of water in the carriages, but he didn't expect that he just casually mentioned a price, and that silly boy bought it. This was the purpose of his advocacy after returning to Lingnan. He also saw that this thing was actually bought as a treasure for a young master who hadn't seen the world. If it was someone else, who would want it? But now, he faintly felt that this boy seemed to be that fool. He couldn't help but look forward to it. Zhang Feng was not a fool. How could he not know the merchant's nature? He drank the tea lightly and said, "I'm a little interested. But as for the specific use of this thing, it depends on the price you mention. If you have a lot of it, I'll naturally buy more. But you have to tell me the use of this thing first. Otherwise, why should I buy it?" Chapter 907. When the Lingnan merchant heard that, he couldn't help but frown deeply. He didn't know what Zhang Feng was planning, but for the sake of the bowl of rice just now, he still said, "Young man, since you look familiar, I'll tell you about it. This thing actually doesn't have much use. Other than being able to start a fire, the kind that is full of smelly smoke, it can only be used to block leaks. Do you know how to refine this thing?" Zhang Feng interrupted the merchant and asked. The merchant was stunned, then nodded and said, "Yes." "That's good." Zhang Feng put down his teacup, put his elbows on the table, and stared at the merchant. "What's your name? I have a good job here. Listen to it first. If you agree, we'll start from today. How about it?" The merchant did whatever he could, but at this moment, he was attracted by the good job Zhang Feng kept talking about. He nodded subconsciously. Zhang Feng then said, "I plan to buy this resin at a price of 100 copper coins per stone, but I have a condition. That is, you have to make it to the way I need it. I'll provide you with a workshop in Chang'an. As for your access to Chang'an and the Tang dynasty, as long as you do it well, one of my businesses in White Deer College may also cooperate with you. How about it?" The merchant was shocked when he heard that. He hurriedly asked, "Young man, you are Zhang Feng?" Hearing that, the merchant trembled all over. Anyone who had been to Chang'an would know who the county magistrate was, but this Zhang Feng was someone he must know. Not only was he generous, but he was also kind. No wonder no one cared about him after being in Chang'an for so long. Now, someone was so kind as to treat him to a meal. It turned out that he had met Zhang Feng. Moreover, Zhang Feng's miraculous methods were the dream of all merchants. Now, he actually met him? The merchant hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Little son Gua greets President Zhang. Zhang Feng didn't reject this kneeling. Instead, he accepted it with a smile. Rubber is a good thing. Not only was it a raw material for making basketballs, but it was also needed for rubber factories in the future. Looking at Sun Gua, Zhang Feng said indifferently, "What are you doing? Get up, get up, get up and talk." Seeing this, only then did Sun Gua stand up timidly, bowing his back and not daring to sit down even if he was beaten to death. "Let me ask you, how much of this resin is there in Lingnan?" "Many. Basically, the mountains and plains of my hometown are filled with these things." "All right, I don't care how you buy it or how much you buy it. I'll only pay you 100 copper coins. Moreover, you need the special ingredients that I want. Do you understand?" Sun Gua was not a fool. The reason why he said that it was 100 copper coins was basically nonsense. In Lingnan, 3 copper coins per caddy was already a sky-high price. Although it had been hyped up by the previous person, the price was still not high. After all, other than Zhang Feng, no one else would buy this thing. It was basically a no-cost business. After finalizing some things, Sun Gua went out happily and sent 10 carts of resin to Niu Pai Huang. After dealing with the rubber matter, Zhang Feng could not help but sit in the restaurant and slowly eat and drink. The promotion of basketball was bound to need basketballs. Now, only the basketball in Li Gan's hands and how many would be produced tonight. However, it was still a drop in the bucket for the whole of Chang'an. He did not dare to imagine what would happen after the Tang dynasty was promoted everywhere. Just like cigarettes. Even if there were hundreds of people smoking cigarettes day and night in Tonghui Square every day, it still could not keep up with the consumption rate. That thing. It was simply too much. These were all things that needed to be dealt with. If one wanted to open a cigarette factory now, one had to wait until the academy was open. The food factory that was located at the entrance of the mountain was already enough to be criticized. If one were to start something else before the academy was open, not to mention others, even Yu Shernan and the others would scold him to death. After dinner, Zhang Feng walked out of the Chong and hotel dizzily. As soon as he walked out, he bumped into someone. After taking a closer look, Zhang Feng could not help but be stunned. "Yo Lao Li, long time no see. Why are you here?" The people who came were Li Shimin, Zhang Sun, and the fourth prince Li Tai, who knew that Zhang Feng was drinking here. Seeing that Zhang Feng recognized them, Li Shimin pulled Zhang Feng into the Chang'an Hotel and then sat down in a private room on the second floor. Zhang Feng then saluted dizzily. "Little brother Zhang Feng greets sister-in-law." Empress Zhang Sun had not been addressed like this for a long time. She nodded as a form of acknowledgement. "Are you brother Zhang Feng?" At this moment, Li Tai, who was hiding behind Zhang Sun and Wu Go, stared at Zhang Feng and asked curiously. Zhang Feng smiled and squatted down. "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Li Dan. Li Gan is my elder brother." "Haha, Prince Zhang, you guys chat. I'll take Dan out for a walk. I haven't been out for a long time and Dan is panicking." While speaking, Zhang Feng got up and sent Zhang Sun and Empress out. Li Shimin then laughed and scolded. "Good fellow, now that you have something good, why didn't you tell me in advance?" Chapter 908. Zhang Feng didn't know how to answer. He said awkwardly, "You haven't come for so long. I thought something had happened to you. How is it? Have you settled the matters at Longyu Road in Chotzi City?" Hearing Zhang Feng's question, Li Shimin's eyes flashed. He tapped his finger on the table a few times and said, "How can things be settled so quickly? Those soldiers have set up camp in Chotzi City. Now that the people are panicking, it's even more chaotic. This time, I came mainly to ask you about the flintlock you mentioned. I heard from Qian that you found a coal mine?" Li Shimin asked the last 2 words in a voice that only the 2 of them could hear. Although the Imperial Guards had already surrounded the restaurant when the 2 of them entered, Li Shimin still had to be extra careful. After all, the Guanlong aristocrats and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs were everywhere. He was a little afraid. Zhang Feng spread his hands and said, "Didn't you already send old Niu there? Do you still need to ask?" "Yes, I did. But I'm still feeling uneasy. Tell me if there's really a coal mine there. If there is, I'll find someone to buy the land now and then." "Wait." Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted Li Shimin and said, "So, you really don't hesitate to take what I found as yours?" Li Shimin couldn't help but be stunned. "We're brothers. What's mine is naturally yours." However, Li Shimin felt that something was wrong when he said that. He hurriedly said, I bought the land. How can you not have a share of it? Zhang Feng heard this and let Li Shimin go. That's more like it. However, there's a high chance that there's coal in piling. But I'm guessing that it's deep coal. It'll be a little difficult to mine it. After all, I'm just guessing. As for the specifics, I will have to wait for Old Cow to return before I can make a decision. Ever since Li Shimin found out about the coal mine, he had been thinking about it. Now that he heard Zhang Feng's words, he was relieved. Chang'an City finally had its own coal mountain. As for whether or not it was easy to dig, that was not something Li Shimin should think about. As long as there would naturally be people who would have a headache over it. However, Zhang Feng asked again, Lao Li, the sword you mentioned last time, you should have brought it back, right? How long has it been? Li Shimin could not help but smile. Still thinking about it? What was the meaning of this? Was he trying to renege on his debt? Zhang Feng was unhappy. I told you, Lao Li. You promised me. I haven't seen this thing yet. Ayaya, this gun and the steel will be difficult to deal with. Li Shimin could not help but laugh. He laughed and scolded, You brat. Well, I can't get it back in a short time. You should know that this kind of treasure from the previous dynasty is accompanied by great risks once it travels on the road. It has already arrived in Liangzhou from Chotzi City. However, I dare not touch it for the time being. After all, once we pass Liangzhou, we will be in the territory of the Li family in Longnan. So we have to be careful. Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but frown. He had not done anything yet, but the Li family in Longnan and the Wang family in Taiyuan had already made a mistake. He really did not know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. He could not help but be immersed in the whole bag. After a while, Zhang Feng rubbed his forehead and said, It seems that we can only be really safe after the gun is out. Li Shimin spread out his hands and agreed. By the way, how is the basketball thing? I heard about it before I entered the Guanyi Road. Zhang Feng was surprised and said, How many days has it been? The basketball thing has already spread outside the Guanyi Road? Zhang Feng doubted the authenticity of the thing. Although it was him who spread the news personally, he did not expect it to spread so fast. It was simply impossible. Of course it could not spread so fast. It was all Li Shimin's casual talk. Seeing that Zhang Feng was serious, Li Shimin did not know what to say. He laughed and said, Well, it's because this thing came from the 5 animal frolics. Zhang Feng did not bother to argue with Li Shimin about the origin of the basketball. After all, he could not explain it clearly. After chatting for a while, Li Shimin could not help but ask, Fengzi, I heard about your matter outside. What are you going to do? Now the news that you were kicked out of Shao Mountain by your fiancé has already spread. Do you know that? Yes. Zhang Feng was shocked and hurriedly asked, Which asshole is so good at spreading rumors? Li Shimin's face turned serious. How can you say that? It doesn't matter if this is the truth or not. What's important is that now the people have seen it. You left your fiancé and confidant on the mountain and went down the mountain to fool around with you. Stop. Zhang Feng can't listen to it anymore. What do you mean by fooling around? I haven't even held her hand before. Zhang Feng shouted that he had been wronged, but Li Shimin only chuckled. If you don't want people to know, don't do it. Since you did it, you must think about the consequences. As Li Shimin spoke, he patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, How about it? Now think clearly. Your marriage can't be delayed any longer. Chapter 909. Reputation was worthless to Zhang Feng. As long as he thought it was right, Zhang Feng would do it. He couldn't be bothered with what others would think of him. But after hearing Li Shimin's words, Zhang Feng was startled. It was fine if he didn't care, but the White Deer Institute couldn't ignore it. Over the past few days, although these people only asked about it, they didn't say anything. But Zhang Feng knew. They had to make a choice for themselves. However, even Zhang Feng himself was a little confused at this moment. Zhang Yuyao was a good girl. What about Jing Shu? She was also a 1 in a million woman. But Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile bitterly. Old Li, I think we should wait for a while. I haven't thought about it yet. As for the reason why I went down the mountain, I don't need to tell you. You should already know, so. Li Shimin smiled helplessly. So, you still want to drag it out? Let's not talk about dragging it out. Forget it. Let's stop here. I'll make arrangements. Zhang Feng stopped him and said, Lao Li, let's not talk about this. I have a serious matter to discuss with you. Now that the rubber issue has been settled, I plan to set up the rubber factory. But you know that White Deer College hasn't opened yet, so I plan to put the rubber factory at Niu Pai Huang first. Once the college's factory is built, we'll move there. How about that? Also, there's the steel factory. As long as there's coal, it's not a problem to smelt steel. I'm worried about leaving it at the foot of the mountain. But once it's started, it can't be stopped. Also, the textile factory hasn't started construction yet. Once the carpenters on the mountain finish the things that the college needs. So, you're saying that you want to be a hands-off boss again? Li Shimin asked straightforwardly. Zhang Feng chuckled when he heard this. Lao Li knows me best. However, Zhang Feng sighed again and said, As you can see, the mid-autumn hunt is imminent. I don't feel at ease leaving this matter to others. I only trust you now, so. You understand. What Zhang Feng said was the truth. After the mid-autumn hunt, it would be the mid-autumn poetry meet. After the poetry meet, it would be time to open the hospital. There wasn't a single day of free time in between. If Zhang Feng put all his experience into this, even though Zhang Feng wasn't worried, if something went wrong, it would be fatal for White Deer College. This was also the result of Zhang Feng going down the mountain to calm down, biting off more than one could chew. At this moment, Xiao Shan was facing such a situation. Papermaking, smelting, and everything else were being done. However, the important construction of the academy and the teaching of the students were stagnant. A few days ago, the students on the mountain had some problems because they had nothing to do. How could Zhang Feng not know? Li Shimin also knew what Zhang Feng was thinking. After thinking for a while, he shook his head gently and smiled. You just have to settle the matters at hand first. As for the rubber factory, why did you put it at the Niu Di Huang? Because of the basketball? Li Shimin couldn't help but think of something and asked. Zhang Feng nodded. Li Shimin didn't know what to say. After all, at this moment, even he couldn't abolish the rules of the mid-autumn hunt. Hence, he could only rely on Zhang Feng's own abilities. As for the basketball, he had seen it on the way to the pub just now. The more he looked, the more Li Shimin felt that it was something that little kids played. He didn't know if it was because Zhang Feng didn't teach it properly or because this group of kids hadn't learned it yet. If during the mid-autumn hunt, Zhang Feng wanted to bring these guys to participate, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a headache. Fengzi, if you really can't do it, I'll find you a Kuju team at. However, Zhang Feng interrupted him and said mysteriously, Don't you believe me? Li Shimin smiled bitterly. It's not that I don't believe you, but look at that group of guys. What are they doing? How is it possible? Seeing that Li Shimin kept asking about this, Zhang Feng seemed to have expected a little. This time, his topic with Lao Li was too heavy. It was a little stuffy, and it was because of this stuffiness that Zhang Feng noticed that Li Shimin seemed to have something on his mind. After all, bringing a family out, wasn't this to relax? Was there such a way to relax? Zhang Feng stared at Li Shimin until Li Shimin felt a little unnatural. Then he said, Lao Li, you are a person who doesn't hide your thoughts. Did something happen? It was fine if Zhang Feng didn't say it, but when he said it, Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. He did have something on his mind, and it was very heavy. However, no one had noticed it for such a long time. How did this kid find out? Was there really something different about him? Could he read people's minds? Li Shimin immediately smiled and said, Before you asked, I really didn't notice any problems, but now that you asked, I do have something to ask you. Zhang Feng thought to himself and said, What's the relationship between the two of us? Say it. Li Shimin heard this and sat silently for a moment. Then he slowly asked, What do you think of the current imperial court? Lao Li, if you didn't mention it, I really would have forgotten about this. Seeing this, Li Shimin said, Now you also realize that something is wrong, right? Zhang Feng nodded, his expression grave. Lao Li, If you are a person of Guanlong, if you see an enemy, such as me, are you suspecting that I am a person of Guanlong? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and asked jokingly. Zhang Feng repeatedly waved his hand. This is just an example. I am making an example, understand? Although Li Shimin didn't understand that barbecue was an example, he still nodded and let Zhang Feng continue. If your enemy's business at this time, that is, I am developing all of this, after seeing all of this, after seeing it, would you be jealous? Yes, the things you have done during this period of time, if it were anyone else such as Niu Weili and you, they would be jealous. Seeing that Li Shimin wanted to drag you into it again, Zhang Feng quickly said, isn't that right? The problem now is that after the immortal ointment incident, these people basically didn't do much. This is not normal. This is simply not Guanlong's style, don't you think? Hearing this, Li Shimin's expression became grave. Although Shao Mountain was basically under the control of the Imperial Guards and Yu Qigong's barracks, if these people wanted to cause trouble, they didn't have to put all of their attention on the mountain. But now, it seemed that these people didn't do anything at all. Li Shimin couldn't help but feel even more irritated. Fengzi, don't play riddles with me. Just tell me what you know. Zhang Feng acted as if he didn't hear him. He played with the bamboo beer container with one hand, turning it over and over again. After a while, Zhang Feng slammed the table and said, Laoli, I got it. Li Shimin was shocked by Zhang Feng's sudden action. He hurriedly asked, what did you think of? The Mid-Autumn Hunt. Zhang Feng said simply and directly. You see, generally speaking, according to the usual pattern, this newly opened academy will participate in the Mid-Autumn Hunt? And the news will only be sent to me 10 days before the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned. But after thinking for a long time, he still couldn't think of this matter. After all, he really didn't think about this aspect. He asked, you mean this Mid-Autumn Hunt is a test from those people in the Imperial Court? They want to destroy your academy? No wonder Li Shimin always felt that something was wrong. Since Feng Xianling came up with the reward and punishment list, he basically didn't have as many things to do as before. But this wasn't a good thing. Instead, it made Li Shimin feel that something big was about to happen. Now that he thought about it, really, something big was about to happen. Even if these people know that I'm in charge of these two places, they still want to do it. What is this? This is premeditated. Guanlong 8 clans, I want to see what you can do this time. Chapter 9-11. Zhang Feng was afraid of death, so most of the time, White Deer College was the Crown Prince's property. Even the retired emperor became the honorary vice dean. What was this? This was a warning to the world that if they wanted to cause trouble, they had to know who was behind the college. Chang'an University was relatively weak. However, Li Shimin was in charge of the construction of the college and everything that followed. Anyone with a bit of status in the imperial court should know about this. Moreover, the Crown Prince's junior tutor, Li Gang, had announced his resignation in court. Then, Li Gang had joined Chang'an University. Last time, Chang Chumo and the others had captured people all over the city and thrown them into Chang'an University. Then, the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet had personally met with the emperor. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Many people knew about this. However, why did this new college receive an invitation to this year's Mid-Autumn Hunt? Why did the invitation only reach the college 10 days before the Mid-Autumn Hunt? The strangest thing was, why couldn't the people of Chang'an University find a Kuju broker even if they wanted to? Previously, Li Shimin had thought that it was because of the rush of events, but now, Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but emit a murderous intent that was hard to conceal. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly said, "Don't get angry. Those people are waiting for us to get angry. Besides, this matter isn't something you can solve. I'm a viscount now, so naturally, they won't dare to do anything. However, if you panic at this time, you'll probably become a breakthrough point for Guanlong. Trouble will naturally find you. Therefore, before the Mid-Autumn Hunt, you'd better focus on your business. As for the rest, I have my own plans." If Li Shimin was really a businessman, then he really couldn't do anything. However, was he really a businessman? Fengzi, you don't know, but these days, Lord Zhang's son has often talked to me about this matter. The emperor also feels that this matter is too strange. Now the emperor wants to deal with the people of Guanlong, but he found that these people are abnormally obedient, so the emperor feels that something is wrong. Zhang Feng said, "That's why you're here today, right?" Li Shimin nodded. On the contrary, Zhang Feng laughed. "Look at the current imperial court, it's basically an iron bucket. If they are stubborn they can go and try it. I really hope that they will try it with our emperor." Li Shimin speechlessly picked up the bamboo tube and bumped it against Zhang Feng's. "You brat, you really wish for the world to be in chaos. If His Majesty really had a direct confrontation with Guanlong right now, what are his chances of winning? Now, the emperor is already badly battered because of the Turkic matter and the matter of India. If the people of Guanlong jump out at this time, then the emperor may really start a massacre. At that time, won't the Tang dynasty really be in chaos? You have a good plan, boy. It's fine if you don't think of a good way for the emperor, but you also... Okay. Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted Li Shimin and rolled his eyes. "So, I'm just a freeloader here?" Li Shimin smiled and said nothing. Zhang Feng slammed the beer can on the table. "Do you really think that Lao Tzu didn't think of this?" "Actually, I thought of this when I received the immortal ointment last time." Zhang Feng leaned closer to Li Shimin and continued. "There is a mole in the court, otherwise, how could he bring this thing up to Shao Mountain? How could he let your people pass? Businessmen who can go up Shao Mountain usually have the obituary of the Ministry of Works or the official documents of the Chong and local government. Without these two things, how could your people, Lao Li, let him go up the mountain? In other words, among your people, there are also people related to Guanlong." Hearing this, Li Shimin's face changed greatly. This was the thing he didn't want to see the most, but now, Zhang Feng said it. What did it mean? Could it be? Li Shimin couldn't help but think carefully. Those who can go up the mountain. Now, I have entrusted the matter of Shao Mountain to Lord Zhang's son. Lord Zhang's son. Naturally. Could it be that something happened to Lord Zhangsuan's people? Li Shimin couldn't sit still at the thought of this. It was really possible that it was the Ministry of Personnel. After all, the Ministry of Personnel used to have the silver of these aristocratic families. Although Li Shimin took some of it, there must be some left. Thinking of this, Li Shimin realized that the forces in the court still needed to be sorted out. I have discussed this matter with Lord Zhang's son before, but these people don't show up now and don't make trouble. Even the emperor can't do anything about it. Tell me, what should we do about this? This time, Zhang Feng was really stumped by the question. After thinking for a while, he said, "This matter is really a bit difficult to deal with, but let me ask you, is the Ministry of Personnel involved in this mid-autumn hunt?" Li Shimin nodded. Yes, it was jointly set by the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights. After the emperor approves it, it will take effect. Do you mean to wait until after the mid-autumn hunt? Chapter 9:12. Li Shimin knew that Guanlong's people wouldn't let this matter rest. But who would have thought that their goal was the mid-autumn hunt? And it was something that Li Shimin cared about the most. What were they trying to do? The Imperial College was basically monopolized by the aristocratic clans and became a stepping stone for them to promote their own disciples. Chang'an University and White Deer Academy. Not to mention the teaching philosophy of these two academies, they were different. Although they knew that the academy was the property of the emperor, they also knew that it was a place where the emperor prepared to nurture his own people. How could they tolerate such a thing happening? Wrong. Li Shimin originally thought that Zhang Feng's novel teaching philosophy would be able to fool these people. After 3 years, he would become famous in the imperial examinations and directly replace the Imperial College's position. That was why Li Shimin promoted White Deer College to the same position as the Imperial College. But now it seemed that these people wanted to completely destroy Li Shimin's foundation. Even though Zhang Feng kept emphasizing that they should wait for the mid-autumn hunt, Li Shimin couldn't wait any longer. At this moment, his eyes emitted a cold light. If it weren't for his lowered eyelids, Zhang Feng, who was sitting beside him, would have noticed it. Li Shimin looked at the indifferent Zhang Feng and couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "Did you prepare something?" "Of course I haven't." Zhang Feng smiled. Li Shimin was stunned when he heard that and said, "Then you?" Zhang Feng couldn't help but laugh. "It's fine. I'm not in a hurry." Why are you in a hurry? Even if the sky collapses, the emperor will naturally hold it up. Don't panic. As for what you said, I naturally remember. I have a plan here. Do you want to hear it? Say it. Li Shimin shook his head speechlessly. The so-called plan is actually to deal with the current situation in India. Think about it. If the emperor could really deal with the Guanlong aristocrats, why would he delay it until now? And why would the Guanlong people choose to attack our academy at this time? Because not only did our academy gain Paper White, Pork Belly, and the top blacksmiths of the western region in this short month, but they also knew about the bone-strengthening powder and the accumulated reputation on the mountain. That's why they chose this time to act. Li Shimin was shocked. Do you mean that this incident between the Turks and India was planned by Guanlong? No. They don't have the guts. Zhang Feng shook his head and dipped his finger in the teacup. Then Zhang Feng roughly drew a few circles on the table and said, the Guanlong aristocrats have been living in the north for a long time. Naturally, they have a lot of interactions with various forces in the north. Therefore, although they can't control a war at this time, their strength is in business. If they make a little move in business and spread the news about the emergence of the Tang dynasty, or cut off the trade routes of those people, don't you think the Turks will be angry? As for Guanlong's people, they only need to say a few words. If they have the time, they can change a dynasty. Li Shimin was shocked. What you mean is that those good merchants are the foundation of a country? No, the merchants are transporting goods. Their purpose is to circulate the goods. Old Li, you should know about this. Among the things they are transporting there are goods. However, I think you, Old Li, will know what else. Information? Li Shimin asked subconsciously. But the next moment, Li Shimin couldn't help but gasp. No wonder. No wonder he felt that something was wrong during this time. There were no changes in Chotzi City for the time being. The army in Tubo was like a hot knife through butter. In Zhenla, the army of the Tang dynasty obviously didn't go there. But why were the 300,000 troops of India still probing the periphery, and there were no signs of an invasion? At this time, the numerous matters made Li Shimin suddenly see the light. Just like what Zhang Feng said, the merchants were not only transporting and circulating goods, but also spreading some things that the enemy wanted to know. Could it be that the Guanlong people wanted to use the foreign forces to suppress the main forces of the Tang dynasty? Then what? Could it be that this mid-autumn hunt was the time to completely fall out with the Guanlong people? Li Shimin wanted to get rid of the Guanlong people in one fell swoop, but now that it was the critical moment, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a little worried. Fengzi, are you saying that during this mid-autumn hunt, will the Guanlong people take drastic measures, just like Emperor Yang of Sui? Li Shimin felt a little thirsty, but he still asked what he wanted to ask the most. Zhang Feng heard this and nodded. They won't. Don't worry, they really don't have the guts. But I have a gift for them during the mid-autumn hunt. Li Shimin heard this and couldn't help but feel happy. He quickly asked, what gift? Zhang Feng glanced at Li Shimin and was a little speechless. Why do you always like to eat carrots and worry about other things? You are a small merchant. Just do your own thing. It's best if you don't ask about these things. Zhang Feng narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. Come here, I'll tell you. Li Shimin saw this and immediately surrounded him. Zhang Feng then said, in fact, you and I both know this thing. I said before that it is to attack Wei to rescue Zhao, but this is also my understanding. As for His Majesty's words, I think His Majesty is waiting. Attack Wei to rescue Zhao? Li Shimin had heard Zhang Feng say this before, but he couldn't remember it at the moment. Now that he heard Zhang Feng say it, he quickly asked, since His Majesty has already made a plan, why is he waiting? What is he waiting for? Li Shimin had a stomach full of question marks, but this guy seemed to be asking for a beating. Li Shimin was so anxious that he wanted to strangle him. Zhang Feng took a sip of tea and said under Li Shimin's anxious gaze, His Majesty is also waiting for the mid-autumn hunt. Don't ask why. Because Guanlong and the others are hiding like tortoises. Even if His Majesty wants to deal with them, wouldn't he have to wait until they show their heads first? But these guys are shrinking their necks and pretending to be cowards. The White Deer College incident obviously went through His Majesty's hands, but His Majesty didn't stop it. Do you know what this means? This means that His Majesty has already started making arrangements. Zhang Feng narrowed his eyes and put the cup in his hand on the table. Then he said, Guanlong and the others will only give themselves away during the mid-autumn hunt. Think about it. Based on His Majesty's personality, would he let them off easily? What if His Majesty doesn't? Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and stood up with the beer in his hand. He paced back and forth in the room. The cigarette between his fingers flickered. Only then did Zhang Feng say, once His Majesty is soft-hearted this time, it will inevitably alarm the Li family of Longnan, the Wang family of Taiyuan, and the other people of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Once they are alarmed, they will unite with the Shandong aristocrats and the remaining forces of Guanlong. At this point, Zhang Feng's voice abruptly stopped. Then he quietly looked at Li Shimin. At this time, Li Shimin's forehead was already full of cold sweat. He had already guessed the outcome. Zhang Feng said faintly, So do you understand now? Chapter 9:14. Li Shimin had already understood. However, when he heard Zhang Feng's words, he realized that the situation had reached a critical point. Although these forces were usually hidden, once something happened to them, they would immediately appear. At that time, the Tang dynasty would be completely destroyed. Now that Zhang Feng had found the coal mine, an idea slowly emerged in Li Shimin's mind. The mines were basically monopolized by the 7 big clans. Now, every new mine in his hands would be exploited by the landowning clans. Li Shimin also knew that at this time, whether it was the Wang clan or the 8 clans in the north, they should have noticed Qiuzi's plan and the current situation in the Tang dynasty. The mid-autumn hunt was a turning point. At this time, Li Shimin was more interested in the firearms that Zhang Feng mentioned. If the firearms were really as mysterious as Zhang Feng said, then even if there were only 5,000 imperial guards in the imperial city, Li Shimin was confident that he could use them to wipe out all the landowning clans. And there would be no losses. This was the best way Li Shimin could think of at this time. As for other plans, those landowning clans had existed for so many years. Who didn't have any connections? To deal with these people, he either didn't touch them, or he would take them down in one fell swoop. This was Li Shimin's plan. At the thought of the firearms, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask again. Fengzi, the current situation is that we don't know the situation in Qiuzi City for the time being. And the mid-autumn hunt is in 8 days. During the mid-autumn hunt, Guanlong's men will take action. How powerful is your firearms? Powerful. At the mention of the firearms, Zhang Feng's eyes flashed with pride. This thing is incredible. While speaking, Zhang Feng pushed open the window on the 2nd floor and looked around. Then he pointed to a pagoda in the distance and said, Where is that? How far is it from here? Li Shimin took a look and said, That's the pagoda of the Transforming Life Temple. It's about 5,000 steps away from here. I'm asking about the straight line distance. Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned as if he had thought of something. He measured the pagoda with his palm and said, If it's a straight line, it should be about 1,000 steps. 1,000 steps? Hee hee. Zhang Feng chuckled and said, If I tell you that I have a way to take the head of anyone on the pagoda from 1,000 meters away without any crossbow, would you believe me? Like hell I'll believe you. Li Shimin blurted out subconsciously. This thing, he had only heard of it in myths and legends. In reality, could it be done? Even the Zhuge divine crossbow, which was specially used to attack cities and kill cavalry horses, couldn't have such a range. But in the next moment, Li Shimin suddenly remembered what Zhang Feng had said before. He couldn't help but be surprised and said, Could it be that the firearms you're talking about can reach such a range? Li Shimin couldn't help but tremble with excitement. Zhang Feng nodded and smiled. It can, but this kind of thing needs to be tested for at least 3 months. Moreover, it needs to wait for the firearms to come out. Ordinary firearms have a range of up to 150 steps, and the most important thing is that the bullets carried by this firearm, you can think of it as arrows. This kind of thing can be carried by a person for at least 200 shots. If you specifically want this kind of thing with a range of 1,000 steps, give me a month's time, at least after the Mid-Autumn Festival. After I come up with the Red Barbarian Cannon, damn it, Lao Tzu will place 2 cannons at the entrance of Shao Mountain. Although it can't reach a range of 1,000 meters, this distance of 500 meters should be easily covered. What's the most important thing? Do you know? How would Li Shimin know about these things that he had never heard of before? Now that he heard Zhang Feng talking about it excitedly, how could it be possible that the starting distance was more than 100 steps? If that was the case, as long as the soldiers here wore those impenetrable shields, who would be able to stop them? At this moment, Zhang Feng was already drunk beyond words. Otherwise, how could he have said such things? However, he wasn't wrong. If it weren't for the technical reasons, once the sniper rifle came out, obviously, Li Shimin was already attracted by the red barbarian cannon that Zhang Feng talked about. In his opinion, this red barbarian cannon was even more awesome than the firearms. He hurriedly asked, "What's the most important thing? Tell me." "Don't be impatient. Don't be impatient." Zhang Feng waved his hand and let Li Shimin help him sit down. Then, he picked up a bean and hooked his finger at Li Shimin. Then, he threw the bean into the cup with all his strength. In an instant, a large splash of water appeared in the cup. At this moment, Zhang Feng pointed at the cup and said, "You can think of this cup as the market at the foot of Shao Mountain. This bean is the cannonball shot out by the red barbarian cannon. Do you understand now? Cup. Shao Mountain? The market?" Then, Li Shimin couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hiss. "Let's go, Fengzi. Let's go up the mountain now. Let's go." Chapter 9:15. At the same time. At the entrance of Tong Hui Fong, Niu Pai Huang squatted on the ground with grievance, hugging 4 basketballs tightly. No matter how much money Li Chengqian and the others offered, he refused to sell. Don't ask. He asked because it was young Master Zhang Feng's decision. Anyway, Niu Pai Huang already knew that these guys were Zhang Feng's subordinates, so he wasn't afraid. At this moment, even Empress Zhang's son, who was sitting on the table prepared by Niu Weili, was a bit irritated. This Niu Pai Huang was a stubborn person. Not selling. Not selling even if he died. Only Zhang Feng. Fine. Empress Zhang's son finally waved her hand and patted the head of Li Tai, who was happily gnawing on the pig trotters, and said, "You guys go play ball. I think Feng Zi and your father will be here soon." Hearing this, Li Chengqian's gaze deeply cut into Niu Pai Huang, and he angrily returned to the court. As for Li Tai, seeing Li Chengqian and the others enter the court, he waved the pig trotters in his hand and cheered loudly. After watching for a long time, he finally stared at Niu Pai Huang, who was hugging the basketball tightly, and said, "I'll trade with you." As he spoke, he took out a piece of jade and a stack of banknotes. Niu Pai Huang looked at the pig trotters in Li Tai's hand, swallowed his saliva, and shook his head vigorously. Although he didn't know how much banknotes this rich young master had, this was Prince Zhang's item. Even if these stubborn people wanted to buy it, he wouldn't sell it. Just based on a little kid like you, he wouldn't care about you. Niu Pai Huang glanced at Zhang's son Wu Go, and then looked at the cold expressionless face behind Zhang's son Wu Go. He fearfully hugged the basketball and distanced himself. At first, he was really worried. However, just a moment ago, a person called Sun Gua came with 10 carts of some resin. He said that Zhang Feng brought word that this thing was the raw material for making basketballs. In an instant, Niu Pai Huang, who was still worried about the raw materials, beamed with joy and almost knelt down before Sun Gua. After knowing that Sun Gua was arranged by Zhang Feng and was a free laborer, even the stingy woman instantly pulled Sun Gua in to work with a smile. Only then did Oxhide Huang have time to hold the basketball to see what Prince Zhang valued so much was. He took a look. He immediately saw the problem. This thing was really something. In the hands of these stubborn people, it was as if the ball had come to life. If it weren't for the fact that these stubborn people were still holding the basketball in their hands, he would have thought that these guys were fighting. At first, these people were still a little unfamiliar with Zhang Feng's techniques. However, after 6 hours, these people actually managed to grasp some of Zhang Feng's techniques. At the very least, his movements were much more graceful. She didn't know if it was because this madam was sitting here or something else. In short, the few of them were very concerned about their image. At this moment, with a commotion among the onlookers, 2 sedan chairs slowly appeared here. Although the onlookers glanced at them, they didn't attract too much attention. After all, there were too many sedan chairs here today. Many people were numb to them. Li Shimin lifted the curtain of the sedan chair and watched the game in silence and interest. At this time, Zhang Feng finally woke up with the shaking of the sedan chair. He took the opportunity to get out of the sedan chair and find a place to relieve himself. When Zhang Feng got out of the sedan chair, the onlookers, who were focused on watching Li Chengqian and the others play basketball, instantly became excited. Zhang Feng finally squeezed through the crowd and found a place where there was no one to relieve himself. At this time, Niu Pai Huang's voice sounded behind Zhang Feng. "Prince Zhang, I've been waiting for you for a long time." This voice almost scared Zhang Feng to death. He hurriedly finished relieving himself and stared at Niu Pai Huang, saying, "Can't you see that I'm relieving myself? Can you at least pay attention to your image?" "What image can I have?" Niu Pai Huang was stunned, but he didn't take it to heart. He hurriedly handed the basketball hidden in the sack to Zhang Feng and said, "I made 4. Li Shimin also saw this scene. Walking down from the dumpling, Li Shimin came in front of Zhang Feng with his hands behind his back and asked, "This is the basketball?" At this time, Niu Pai Huang obviously paid a little attention to the basketball. Not only was it polished, but there were also some decorative patterns carved on it. After a layer of beautiful paint, the basketball instantly had that kind of smell. Zhang Feng patted the basketball a few times and then handed one to Li Shimin, saying, "This is for you. If you have nothing to do, exercise more." Li Shimin didn't refuse. He smiled and asked, "How much is the cost of one basketball?" Niu Pai Huang looked at Zhang Feng and then looked at Li Shimin. Under Zhang Feng's signal he said, "Not counting the labor costs and the materials Prince Zhang found, 10 copper coins is enough." "Then, how much are you selling it for now?" Prince Zhang set the price, 100 copper coins. Li Shimin heard and nodded. Gizi. Xiao Gizi, who was standing behind Zhang Sun and Wu Go, hurriedly came forward. Li Tai also came forward. "Give him 500 copper coins. I'll buy these." "No, these are Prince Zhang's things. I'll only give them to young Master Zhang Feng." Niu Pai Huang held the remaining few balls in his hand tightly and shook his head. Zhang Feng found it funny and said, "He's my brother. From now on, he'll be the one to talk to you about basketball matters. The extra money is a reward. What are you waiting for?" Chapter 9:16. Li Shimin and the others slowly arrived at the gate of White Deer College. Yu Shernan and the others, who had received the news, were already waiting at the gate. Although Li Shimin's identity was not exposed, everyone knew that Lao Li had a deep relationship with the dean. The basic construction of the college was funded by him. Therefore, at this moment, everyone was not disgusted by Yu Shernan and the others' personal greeting. Once they got off the carriage, Yu Shernan and the others cupped their fists and greeted them. After Li Shimin and Empress Zhang Sun greeted everyone, they pointed at Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu, who were at a loss, and said with a smile, "These two are Zhang Feng's, cough cough." When the children saw the graceful and luxurious Zhang Sun Wu go beside Li Shimin, they were first stunned. Although Empress Zhang Sun's clothes were simple and one could not tell that she was an empress, her arrogance still made people unable to look at her. But who was Jing Shu? After gently touching Zhang Yuyao, the two girls came to Empress Zhang Sun's side and said, "My daughters Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu greet Madame Li." Zhang Sun Wugo also fell in love with these two girls in an instant. Jing Shu was needless to say. She was a daughter of a respectable family, and was exceptionally intelligent. She should have known her identity long ago. As for Zhang Yuyao, her face was always red, as if she was afraid of everything. Anyone could not help but feel pity for her. Zhang Sun Wugo came forward and held each of their hands. She said with a smile, "Good, good, good. Both of you are good girls. This is my first time coming to Shao Mountain. Let's go take a look." After Empress Zhang Sun and the others left, only then did Zhang Feng get out of the palanquin. "Oh, all my esteemed teachers are here? Go, 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 why are you all standing here?" Yu Shernan glared at Zhang Feng and said, "This is your place. If you don't say anything, how can we break into your room?" "There's no need for that. I'll get Fengzi to accompany me to the workshop. If you're interested, why don't we go together?" Li Shimin interrupted them with a smile. Since the emperor had spoken, what else could they say? He could only nod and point into the distance. "Lead the way. What are you waiting for?" "Oh, Zhang Feng was dumbfounded by their actions. He grabbed 2 basketballs from the palanquin and tossed them to Shiva, who was standing at the side like a wooden chicken. Then he led everyone up the mountain. Shiva was completely dumbfounded. He didn't notice that the ball had hit his head. By the time he reacted, the ball had already left his head and landed in the hands of the students who were watching. Oh my God! Is this the basketball that the dean made? Is this the thing that can strengthen the body and prolong life? Hey! Isn't this Kuju? Come. Who knows how to play this thing? Come, I know. It's played with your hands. Come. Senior. Teach us. Okay. Let's do it together. I heard that the dean is currently working on the mid-autumn hunt. Shiva only recovered from his shock when he heard the clamor of the crowd. However, he still felt that he was dreaming. He couldn't help but pull a student who was passing by and said, "Senior, can you hit me?" That person was dumbfounded. He looked at Shiva suspiciously and was about to leave. Shiva quickly gave him a cigarette. That person coughed and said, "Are you sure you're itching for a beating? Do you want to be beaten?" Shiva nodded. "You can try hitting me, or I'll hit you." Bang! The man didn't wait for Shiva to finish speaking before he punched Shiva's face. That instant of pain made Shiva realize the reality of the situation. This wasn't a dream. This was King real. The Emperor. The Emperor of the Tang Dynasty was actually brothers with Zhang Feng? What the CK? What was going on? Was the Emperor of the Tang Dynasty also casual? How could this be? At this time, Shiva was already in a mess. He couldn't understand what the Emperor and Zhang Feng were thinking. However, he remembered that not long after Zhang Feng gave him a suggestion, the Emperor actually agreed to trade with Zhanla. And then the banknotes, the cooperative, and the fine salt. Now it seemed that it was all the dean's doing. Shiva couldn't help but feel that Zhang Feng's mysteriousness had increased by another notch. This made Shiva even more desperate. If this was the case, then this college and the fact that he could go up the mountain made Shiva break out in a cold sweat. This was all approved by the Emperor. Otherwise, he couldn't imagine what would happen to him at this time. Shiva couldn't help but take out a small notebook from his chest and write with trembling hands, "I am the mysterious dean of White Deer College. I am brothers with the Emperor of the Tang Dynasty. Zhang Feng's teacher is the most dangerous, mysterious, and respected person in the Tang Dynasty. He is the reverse scale of the Tang Dynasty that I, Zhenla, must never offend." Chapter 9:17. As for Shiva, he was shocked. Obviously, Zhang Feng could not see it. At this time, under the mountain breeze, Zhang Feng completely sobered up. He found a place where there was no one around and forced himself to spit it out. Only then did he feel much better. Getting drunk after drinking beer was simply fatal. When they arrived at the smelting workshop, they bumped into Alkinan, who was yelling and urging everyone to help him. Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he saw him. "Laoli, dear teachers, we have come at the right time. The first steel of the Tang Dynasty is out." While he was talking, Li Shimin and the others were shocked to see Zhang Feng waving his hand and shouting, "Alkinan, wait, I will open the furnace myself." At such an important time, how could Zhang Feng let it go? Alkinan and the others were about to go into the dark cave, which was still flickering with a trace of fire. When they heard Zhang Feng's voice, they hurriedly shouted a few times and rushed out of the cave excitedly. Compared to the last time Zhang Feng came, Zhang Feng felt that the way these people looked at him had changed. At least this time when he saw them, they did not have a sour expression. In fact, there was even a trace of respect in their eyes. Zhang Feng saluted them and thanked them for their hard work. Then he walked to Alkinan and Mokido and asked, "How is it?" "Honorable Dean, you're really amazing. Although this old man didn't see the molten iron in the furnace, I can assure you that it's definitely that kind of steel material you've mentioned." "Good." Zhang Feng gave a thumbs up and said to Alkinan and Mokido, "You have all worked hard. You have all done well. As long as this furnace of steel is really refined, I will reward each of you with 10 taels of gold. I will also allow you to write a letter to your families and send it back to your hometown." Hearing this, everyone was stunned at first. Then, everyone's eyes became wet. With a plop, they knelt down in front of Zhang Feng. "Thank you, Sir Dean. Although everyone knew their identities at this time, it would be better if they could write a letter to their family at this time. After all, they couldn't imagine what would happen to their families after they left. At this moment, Li Shimin, Yu Shernan, and the others were also surprised. Although Zhang Feng was a little more clever, they also knew the principle that people with ulterior motives were bound to have ulterior motives. But now, Li Shimin didn't think much of it. He waved his hand and said, "As long as this furnace is really made of the kind of steel that Fengzi said, I will personally find someone to escort your letters home. Moreover, I will also bring their families to the Tang dynasty." Really? This time, Mokido and Arkanon could no longer sit still. Although they were not the kind of people who would betray their masters for glory, who would not yearn for the glorious Tang dynasty? But now, their whole family could come, they could be reunited with their families again. Both Mokido and Algernon's crooked beards trembled. Once again, they knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Li Shimin several times. The craftsman did the same. Li Shimin also accepted all of this with a smile. He waved his hand and said, "You all do a good job. As long as you don't have ulterior motives, not to mention bringing your families to the Tang dynasty, even giving you the identity of the Tang dynasty and buying a family business in the most prosperous city of Chong, and is a small matter. But you all know the risks and consequences of bringing your families from the distant western regions to the Tang dynasty. I will take care of all of this. But if you dare to disobey me, I, Lao Li, will do what I say. As long as I find out, your families will be burned to ashes by my anger." Hearing this, Mokido and the other craftsmen kowtowed again and even swore. "Respected Mr. Tang, you can rest assured. As craftsmen, our greatest wish is to learn the best things. We only care about our achievements. As for what you've said, after we've seen the Dean's miraculous skills, we won't go back even if he chases us back to that remote village. Don't worry. Come on, Lao Li. Why do you have to scare them?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and then helped Mokido and Algernon up. He said, Get up, get up. I have a rule on this mountain. You may not know it, but I will tell you in person today. The most important craftsmen must have their own pride. What is lofty and unyielding character? Just like the first day you met me, this is something that a craftsman must have. It is also the first thing that I will teach you. With lofty and unyielding character, the things that you make will have souls. Zhang Tai said with a smile, "That's right." Hearing this, everyone could not help but tremble. Especially Yu Shernan and the others, they frowned and pondered. Zhang Feng saw this and waved his hand. "The second rule is that as long as you are a student of White Deer College, as long as you are under me, Zhang Feng, you must kneel to heaven and earth and your parents. No one dares to kneel to anyone. Don't let Lao Tzu know. If he knows, Lao Tzu will personally cripple him. Lao Tzu can't afford to lose face like that." Hearing this, Algernon and the other craftsmen were so excited that they were shaking all over. This is what craftsmen are like. No wonder everyone yearns for the Tang dynasty. This is the spirit of a big country. Seeing that the effect was almost there, Zhang Feng said with a smile, "Okay, the things in the furnace are almost there. Open the furnace. Open the furnace. Let us see what you are making." Hearing this, Alkinnon wiped the tears off his face and shouted to the sky, "Turn on the furnace!" Chapter 9:18. Li Shimin agreed with Zhang Feng's words. If a person had no backbone, then... At this time, Li Shimin looked at Yu Shernan and the others, who were in deep thought. Then, he looked at Sun Simiao, who was stroking his beard and looking at Zhang Feng with a smile. Li Shimin stepped forward and asked with a smile, "Dr. Sun, what do you think of what Fengzi said just now?" Sun Simiao laughed and said, "Actually, you already have a conclusion, don't you? Although this kid is full of problems and likes to boast, his character is unquestionable. He is a good guy. Ha ha ha." Hearing this, Li Shimin and Sun Simiao laughed loudly. It was also at this time that a few knocks sounded from the dark cave. Li Shimin and the others hurriedly went forward. But they had never seen such a thing before. Everyone was staring at the red-hot stove, their faces filled with nervousness. Most of them were holding buckets of water, but no one knew what they were doing. Below the stove, Mokido was also using mud to make a grinding tool. Done. Following Zhang Feng's words, the sound of a heavy hammer being hammered was heard. A crack suddenly appeared on the wall of the furnace, which was still red. Immediately, a scorching heat and a touch of liquid that made people's eyes hurt slowly flowed down the crack. When Zhang Feng saw this, he hurriedly picked up a long iron rod. On the other side, Alkinan picked up the hammer in Zhang Feng's hand and slammed it down on the place where the molten iron was flowing. Ding! A crisp sound was heard. The crack became bigger, and more golden liquid flowed down slowly from the crack. At this point, Zhang Feng hurriedly took out a pair of sunglasses from his arms and put them on. He stared at the flowing molten iron and urged everyone to hurry up and leave. The molten iron flowed very quickly, and Zhang Feng, who was closest to the furnace, emitted a charred smell from his robes. His hair that draped over his shoulders was also slowly bending. Seeing that the molten iron had almost flowed out, Zhang Feng ignored the heat and waved his hand. Quickly dig the trench. Once the order was given, the craftsman who had been waiting by the side hurriedly took out a small metal rake. He slowly dug out a trench in front of the hot and glaring molten iron. The molten iron slowly flowed to a more spacious area outside the cave amidst a sizzling sound. Zhang Feng hurriedly walked out of the cave that was about to roast him alive. However, he didn't have the time to look at his burnt clothes. Instead, he carefully watched the molten iron slowly turn from a dazzling gold to a scarlet red, and then slowly cool down. Subsequently, Zhang Feng waved his hand. Those who were already waiting by the side with buckets of water poured water onto the cooling molten iron bit by bit. Instantly, pitch-black smoke and dust engulfed the entire smithing workshop. Li Shimin and the others were so frightened that they retreated continuously. After the temperature of the molten iron gradually cooled down, they followed Zhang Feng into the workshop. What entered their eyes was the molten iron that was more than 1 zhang long. It had already turned into a metallic gray color. Arkanon and the others frowned as they stared at the object on the ground, not daring to touch it. Zhang Feng saw this. He picked up a hammer and knocked on the solidified iron on the ground, shaking off the residue on the surface. Hearing the sound, Zhang Feng was delighted. Although the sound couldn't be heard clearly because of the ground, it was definitely made of steel. Seeing this, Zhang Feng picked the simplest and weakest part and found a blacksmith to cut it out for him. Even though this piece was only the size of a finger and was very thin, what surprised everyone was that it was actually a piece of metal that was as thin as a finger. The two blacksmiths wasted at least 3 chisels to cut off that piece of iron, no, steel. Seeing this, Li Shimin stared fixedly at the piece of steel, and his eyes shot out waves of scorching heat. Fengzi, is this steel? Li Shimin's question instantly attracted everyone's attention to Zhang Feng. Even Yu Shernan and the others were looking at Zhang Feng's face. Arkanon and the others were the same. Everyone was looking forward to seeing if the thing in Zhang Feng's hand was the kind of material that could make an impenetrable shield or an invincible spear. After all, this thing could no longer be described as iron. What a joke! How could a chisel that wouldn't break after months or half a year be like a piece of wood in front of this thing? It would be strange if it wasn't made of steel. At this time, Zhang Feng looked at the thing in his hand and knocked twice on the forging table. Listening to the crisp sound, he said something that made Li Shimin want to vomit blood. Lao Li, I don't have any money. You pay for the 10 taels of gold each. And what you promised, you do as you see fit. Although Zhang Feng didn't give a direct answer, the moment he said this, everyone was excited and shocked. It's done! We've finally made steel. Ha 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 ha. Woo woo, my family. I can finally reunite with you in the Tang dynasty. We don't have to starve anymore. Algernon and the others, who were standing at the side, were actually more anxious than everyone else present, including Li Shimin. This was because this time, although Zhang Feng had promised them gold, as well as things related to smelting in the future, and even promised them to send letters to their families, in their hearts, the arrival of their families was the most important thing. After all, they really didn't know if this thing would work or not. As craftsmen, what they hoped for the most was to achieve something. However, Zhang Feng's words had now left them hanging. They didn't dare to ask and could only watch as the few of them argued. Zhang Feng was a little annoyed by the noise. He originally wanted to pretend to be mysterious, but now everyone was doubting this thing? Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped everyone and said, "This thing is very good. Although it can't be made into a gun barrel, it's more than enough to make rifling or mounting. Moreover, it's heavier. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish, Li Shimin hurriedly interrupted him. I don't understand what you're talking about, and I don't want to hear it. Just tell us if this thing is good or not. Isn't that enough? Is there a need to beat around the bush? Seeing this, Yu Shernan and Algernon also showed a confused expression. Zhang Feng could only shake his head and sigh. He had met the wrong person. If this was in the future, even a 3-year-old child would know. Why didn't these people know anything? He didn't want to explain more. However, he didn't know how to say it. Zhang Feng sorted out his thoughts and smacked his lips. It's hard to explain it to you. How about this? I won't say anything too complicated. I'll just say one thing. This thing is a part of making a gun, and it's a very important part. As for the gun, these things have to wait for the next step. Only after mastering the second layer of forging and the second layer of smelting, can the gun barrel be considered a complete gun. Chapter 9:20. Double overlay? Is this okay? Alkinen could not help but ask. But seeing Yu Shernan covering Zhang Feng's mouth, he could only wait again. Li Shimin saw this and quickly pulled Yu Shernan over. Mr. Bo, sure, this is a serious matter. Although the academy is important, as Fengzi said before, if there is no peace at the border, how can there be peace at home? So I think Fengzi is not only seeking peace for the people of the world, but also for the academy. So I hope Mr. Bo sure will not worry about this. After all, although Fengzi's actions seem to have nothing to do with the academy, think about it. Without the support of Fengzi's businesses, how can he support these people on the mountain? Hearing this, Zhang Feng was so moved that he almost cried. He gave Li Shimin a big thumbs up and looked at Yu Shernan and the others who were hesitating. He then said, Dear teachers, although I did not discuss this with you, Lao Li is right. If it weren't for these things, if it weren't for those soldiers who risked their lives to protect us, how could we still have our peace and prosperity? Ouyang Sun interrupted Zhang Feng and said, Boy, we are not saying that you can't do this. Look, there are only 8 days before you represent the academy to go hunting. You should pay more attention to the importance of hunting than anyone else. After that, there is the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet and the academy opening ceremony. Think about it, how much time do you have to kill? Let's not talk about the academy now. We are supporting you, but as the dean, shouldn't you think more about the academy? Under Li Shimin's persuasion, they finally stopped worrying about this matter. But they still tried to persuade Zhang Feng for a while. What could Zhang Feng say? He could only nod desperately. Then, Ouyang Sun waved his hand and said, Boy, it's good that you know what you are doing. But since you have been here for so long, why don't you start? Let old man and the others see what kind of magical effect this thing you're talking about has. The corner of Zhang Feng's mouth twitched. You guys are the ones who are messing around. If it wasn't for you guys, why was it so difficult for me? However, Zhang Feng only dared to snort a few times in his heart before he eagerly threw the steel plate into the furnace. Arjanon and the others also wanted to see the wonders of this thing. They simply took off their outer clothes, revealing their muscles. They carried the sledgehammer and waved it twice, indicating that they would personally do the forging later. When the crowd saw this, they could only stand aside and watch. A moment later, the steel sheet was burning red. Zhang Feng clamped the steel plate and waved his hand. Then, Arjanon spat into his palm. After waving the sledgehammer for a while, he smashed it hard on the steel plate. What was surprising was that the steel plate did not react at all. Even though it was smashed, it was still as steady as an old dog. Seeing this, Makito did not care about anything else. He squeezed through the crowd of blacksmiths, picked up a sledgehammer bigger than Arjanon's, and joined in. Clang, 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 clang. In an instant, the entire valley was filled with a series of crisp and continuous hammering sounds. Zhang Feng could not bear the torture of his ears, so he threw this difficult task to the group of blacksmiths. The hammering sounds continued for at least 4 hours. Finally, when Li Shimin's patience was about to run out, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped the hammering. At this time, Li Shimin and the others gathered around. At first glance, they could not help but be stunned. Before this, Zhang Feng had only used a thin steel plate that was 2 fingers wide and 1 finger long. But now, after 4 hours of hammering, which was what Zhang Feng called the double hammering method, What appeared before everyone's eyes was a cross-shaped arrowhead that looked like two arrowheads stacked together. However, this arrowhead had a long handle. It was very long and narrow. It looked like a stick, and it was actually 5 inches long. Li Shimin picked up the arrowhead and looked at Zhang Feng suspiciously. Don't tell me that you made this in 4 hours? Yes. Zhang Feng took the arrowhead from Li Shimin's hands and raised it high. Everyone, this is what I call the Mitsubishi bayonet. Kinnon, quickly go and sharpen it. Men, go and borrow a set of armor from the barracks. The Mingguang armor that is best used by the generals. Following Zhang Feng's orders, Cheng Yaojin's voice came from afar. Brother Zhang, you don't have to go. I've brought it. Everyone looked over and saw that Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong had unknowingly walked over with a majestic gait. And one of Cheng Yaojin's followers was holding a set of golden armor. Zhang Feng looked and waved his hand. Old Chen, you really are. What was that saying again? Yes, speak of the devil and he will appear. Come, come, come. You have great strength. Come and try my new good weapons. Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong arrived. First, he exchanged glances with Li Shimin. Then he cupped his hands and said, I heard Fengzi's knocking at the foot of the mountain just now, so I couldn't help but come up the mountain to take a look. What is this Mitsubishi bayonet? After Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong cupped their hands and greeted everyone, they stared at the strange object that the blacksmith was polishing. After a while, after seeing the sharp tip of the Mitsubishi bayonet, Zhang Feng urged Cheng Yaojin to put the armor on a tree. He then threw the Mitsubishi bayonet to Cheng Yaojin and said, Old Chen, since you're here, I'll let you try out the difference between this thing and a dagger and a long sword. Chapter 921. Seeing this, Cheng Yaojin clenched his fists after receiving Li Shimin's signal. In an instant, there was a burst of popping sounds like beans being fried. Cheng Yaojin saluted the crowd, then came to Zhang Feng and looked at the bayonet in Zhang Feng's hand. Fengzi, why is this thing not as heavy as a Modeo? Are you sure that this thing can pierce through my armor? The armor that I borrowed? Zhang Feng grinned mysteriously. Why don't you give it a try? Seeing Zhang Feng's expression, Cheng Yaojin couldn't help but feel suspicious. Looking at the bayonet in his hand, Yu Qigong was so angry that he wanted to beat someone up. Yu Shernan, Jinren, Alkinan, and the others also stared at the bayonet in Cheng Yaojin's hand without blinking. Their hearts couldn't help but beat faster. Although this thing was made by Zhang Feng, it was the first weapon he made in the Tang dynasty after all. It was also the first weapon made with a mysterious steel, although its shape was strange. What everyone ate and drank, and whether they could see their families or not, depended on this thing. Cheng Yaojin waved the bayonet for a while. He always felt that this thing was too small. Can't you make it bigger? It was so small that it didn't look domineering at all. However, Cheng Yaojin was tempted. After seeing Zhang Feng's mysterious smile again, he casually waved the bayonet in his hand and fiercely stabbed at the armor on a palm tree on the edge of the cliff. The next moment, to everyone's surprise, the Mingguang armor, which the Tang dynasty was most proud of, was pierced through in an instant like it was made of paper. Hiss! At this moment, gasps could be heard throughout the smithy. The Mingguang armor, especially the commander-level Mingguang armor, was extremely complicated to make. The whole body was mixed with chains and iron plates. Even the breastplate on the chest was something that the Turks would shrink back at the sight of. It was also because of the Mingguang armor that the Tang army became famous. But now? It was like a piece of paper in front of a small cudgel. Even Yu Shernan and the others couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. I'll do it again. Cheng Yaojin was so excited that he swallowed his saliva. He couldn't hide the passion in his eyes. He hurriedly pulled out the bayonet and stabbed at the strongest part of the Mingguang armor. He deliberately weakened his strength. However, the Mitsubishi military knife was only slightly obstructed. Then, under everyone's horrified gaze, it once again pierced through the breastplate that was made up of a whole piece of plate armor. At this moment, Yu Qigong and Li Shimin couldn't stay calm. Li Shimin pushed Cheng Yaojin away and pulled out the bayonet to observe carefully. The breastplate of the radiant armor was the toughest part of the body. Even if they fired their crossbows, they might not be able to damage it, let alone the general-grade radiant armor. But now, In front of this bayonet, it was like a piece of paper? Li Shimin didn't believe it. He also grabbed the bayonet and stabbed it 3 times in a row. However, each time, it was as easy as piercing a piece of wood. At this moment, Li Shimin couldn't stay calm. Looking at the bayonet without any gap, he asked in horror, "Fengzi, this thing, is it really the kind of spear that can break through anything?" Although his question was a little strange, at this moment, it represented everyone's thoughts. After all, they had heard Zhang Feng talk about this thing before. Zhang Feng swept his gaze across the crowd and said with a faint smile, "That's right. Otherwise, why would I put in so much effort to get it out?" Li Shimin heard this and looked at the thing in his hand. He frowned and said, "This thing is okay, but why is the shape so ugly? It would be better if it looked like a dagger." "This," Zhang Feng sighed. "All right, let me explain to you why this thing is like this." As he spoke, Zhang Feng took the bayonet from Li Shimin's hand and waved at everyone. He said, "Look at the 3 things on this bayonet." "What are these?" Cheng Yaojin asked curiously. Although this thing didn't look like much, and its shape was very strange. But it was this inconspicuous thing that could pierce the world's hardest armor a few times as if it was nothing. Everyone wanted to know the power of this thing and why Zhang Feng did this. "Blood groove." Zhang Feng pointed at the grooves in the middle of the Mitsubishi bayonet and said, "You've all seen the damage of this thing. Since they actually used this thing, it means that the war has reached a critical stage. Ordinary sword and knife wounds are basically no big deal after some rest. But if you are stabbed by this thing, the 3 blood grooves and the 3 blades will continuously increase the clotting ability of the wound and achieve the effect of continuous bleeding." Zhang Feng continued to introduce the benefits of the bayonet. But slowly, Li Shimin and the others listened more and more enthusiastically, while Yu Shernan and the others' faces became darker and darker. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish, Yu Shernan and the others snorted angrily and left in a huff. "Wait, go to my bamboo house and find me." After saying that, Yu Shernan and the others left angrily. However, Li Shimin's eyes were burning as he put the Mitsubishi military knife into his bosom. How could he not take such a good treasure? Chapter 922. Zhang Feng immediately reacted. Zhang Feng had been so focused on talking about how awesome this thing was that he had forgotten that these people had always advocated for peace. However, he did not care anymore. Once this matter was dealt with, the matter on the other side would naturally be easier to deal with. After all, he had already made it very clear. If there was no peace at the border, who would be able to peacefully read the sage books in this bright academy? However, when he saw Li Shimin put away the bayonet, he pretended not to see it. Then, he looked at Arkanon and the others and said, "You all saw this thing, right? This is the thing that I spent a lot of time researching. However, don't worry, this thing is only at the most basic level. As long as you want to use your own hands to turn the thing in my mind into reality, I, Zhang Feng, am willing to teach you. Furthermore, I will allow your names to appear on this weapon." Arkanon and the others could not help but tremble when they heard this. "Really?" Zhang Feng nodded with certainty. "I'm sure." Arkanon and the others were so moved that they knelt on the ground. "Dean, for your great kindness we can only—" "What are you doing? Have you all forgotten what I said before?" Zhang Feng's expression became serious. He said somewhat angrily, "I said before that a man should have a man's pride. If you don't have a man's pride and kneel when you see someone, then the things in your hands, no matter how good they are, will be trash. Because he doesn't have a man's pride. I know that you all were top blacksmiths and blacksmiths in the western regions. However, you all have seen this thing. If you really want to go further in this field, I, Zhang Feng, am willing to teach you all what you can learn. Not to mention firearms, even if it is something that can be fired directly from here to the Turkic kingdom, as long as Lao Tzu thoroughly researched it, I will definitely teach you how to make it. But you should also understand the premise." However, Zhang Feng's action made Li Shimin a little confused. After Zhang Feng finished delegating the matter, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask on the way back, "Fengzi, there are so many craftsmen in the Tang dynasty. Why did you? Do you know the tool man?" Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and pointed in the direction of the waterfall. "You may not understand even if I tell you. They are actually a group of lunatics. For something, they will spend their whole life trying to climb to the peak. Previously, We extinguished all their hopes and left a window for them. As long as they have gratitude in their hearts, under the constant stimulation and temptation in the future, they will definitely be much better than these top craftsmen of the Tang dynasty. Li Shimin was even more confused about Zhang Feng's idea. Zhang Feng's idea was very simple. He wanted to cultivate these people as scientific lunatics. As long as he could cultivate these 30 people into scientific lunatics, his research institute would be truly established. As for this matter, Zhang Feng already had a plan when he first saw these 30 people. If he used people from the Tang dynasty, would he treat them in this way? I believe you should know that, Lao Li. This is also why I don't need local craftsmen from the Tang dynasty. First, these people are easy to control. They don't have so many entangled interests. In their hearts, no matter how good their lives are, they are still slaves. In order to get rid of this label and let their descendants truly raise their heads, they will only work harder to complete the tasks I assign. Zhang Feng's words made Li Shimin's mind roar. As Zhang Feng said, this was exactly what he was worried about and hesitated to call the craftsmen from the Ministry of Works, or to recruit some smelting masters from the people. But after thinking about it, these people basically had a complicated network of relationships, and what Zhang Feng controlled could easily affect the rise and fall of a dynasty. Therefore, Li Shimin just kept silent, but he somewhat understood Zhang Feng's approach. Li Shimin smacked his lips, touched the Mitsubishi bayonet in his sleeve and said, "Feng Zi, do you plan to make these things with these 30 people? If so, when will we be able to?" "Who said that?" Zhang Feng turned around and looked at Arkanon and the others, who were busy working excitedly, and said, "These people are all treasures. Now that the steel has been successfully refined, the next thing they need to do is to refine it. As for the later stages, you still need to find someone to do it, such as tempering and so on. As long as I'm done with the smelting, the rest is up to you. As for whether you can make a gun within a month, that's up to you." Li Shimin heard this and could not help but smile bitterly. "You still want to set me up?" But Li Shimin immediately understood Zhang Feng's intention, and nodded in agreement. But when they reached the mountain gate, Li Shimin could not help but ask, "Then this bayonet, you plan to?" "When there is more coal, I will set up a steel factory on the mountain. I have already told you about this. Therefore you can decide what to make in the future. My mountain is only in charge of the raw materials. As for the firearms, other than the precision parts, you only need to find someone to process them immediately. This thing doesn't require any technical skills, so even if the news of it spreads, it won't be a big deal." Li Shimin's eyes flashed. He did not understand Zhang Feng, especially now Zhang Feng's approach. He could not help but ask in surprise, Isn't this a little too?" "What's that?" Zhang Feng said with a smile. "This is a new business model. A group of people can drive a group of people. I think you, Lao Li, understand the principle of a group of people driving a group of people, right?" Chapter 923. Li Shimin and Chang Yaojin did not follow Zhang Feng to Yu Shernan's bamboo house. The three of them sat in Zhang Feng's living room, smoking cigarettes one by one and frowning. At this time, Li Shimin took out the Mitsubishi bayonet that he had just forged and carefully observed it. The bayonet was hammered out using the forging method, and there were irregular water droplets stacked on top of the bayonet. It also had the kind of colorful color that was left behind after being quenched, making the bayonet look quite strange. The bayonet had a sharp point. If all three sides of the bayonet were opened, no one knew what effect it would have. However, it seemed that this bayonet could not withstand being chopped and smashed, so it could only be used as a bayonet. "Old Hey, what do you think? Can this bayonet be used in the whole army?" Chang Yaojin and Yu Qigong hesitated for a while. In the end, Chang Yaojin frowned and took the bayonet from Li Shimin's hand. He played with it in his hand and said, "Second Master, to be honest, this bayonet reminds me of a kind of profession that Feng Zi mentioned before." "Tell me about it." Li Shimin's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "If it's used in the whole army, Feng Zi can't make so many bayonets in a short time even if he works himself to death. Even if he outsources this bayonet, although I don't know what it means, the general idea is to find a smelting workshop and let them forge these bayonets into what we need. However, if it's used in the vanguard battalion that Feng Zi mentioned before, or for spies or sneak attacks, The effect may be... Li Shimon's eyes lit up when he heard that. If that was the case, it was really feasible. In a year's time, when the smelting technique was perfected, the whole Tang army would be wearing this kind of armor made of steel and armed with guns. Then, who could resist the Tang dynasty's army? The more he thought about it, the more excited Li Shimon became. He waved his hand and said, "Pass down the order. Have all our subordinates focus on collecting iron and coal, as well as the forging of these things. Just this stiletto, you all saw it. It took at least 4 hours to forge. If there are more, how much will it cost? What we lack now is not people, but this kind of rare steel. As long as we have more people when the time comes, I will open a large smelting workshop on this mountain. In less than a year, no, only half a year, 10,000 smelters won't be able to produce enough equipment for 10,000 people, right? As long as we have these 10,000 people, even if the Turks mobilize their entire army, what do we have to fear? Let alone 10,000 people. At this time, even if there were only 100 of them, Chang Yaojin would still dare to lead them to clash with the Turks' main force. But, although Li Shimon's words were very good, and everyone had a good idea, everything needed a process. Chapter 924. On the other side. Zhang Feng slowly came to the bamboo hut of Yu Shernan and the others. Although the villa for them was almost finished, and the bamboo hut for them had been renovated long ago, the 4 old masters took a different path and lived in elder son's place. They did not mind the smell of herbs inside. When Zhang Feng came to greet them, Yu Shernan and the others looked gloomy. Zhang Feng had long known that they would behave like this. He pretended not to see them and bowed. Student Zhang Feng pays his respects to all my teachers and elder Sunday. Oh, isn't the dean here in person? Come, take a seat. When Ouyang Sun heard this, he acted as if he had just seen Zhang Feng and hurriedly got up to greet him. Zhang Feng was speechless when he saw this. As Ouyang Sun stood on the main seat, he did not know whether to sit or stand. Helplessly, he said, "This little one understands the intentions of my esteemed teachers. This little one's actions are indeed to fend off the foreign enemies. As a man of the great Tang, as a Han, this little one believes that each of us should have the responsibility to protect our country." Yes, you are right. Everything you say is right. We are old and confused. Ouyang Sun continued faintly. I asked you to come here today mainly to hand over the matters of the academy. Old man will return to Luozhou tomorrow morning. Looks like he's really pissed off. Zhang Feng instantly felt a splitting headache. He thought of many things in the ancient language, but he felt that they were inappropriate at this time. He could only say, "Believe me, please listen to my plan. The Mitsubishi army knife is indeed cruel in your eyes." Cruel? Ouyang Sun sneered. You know what cruelty is? Do you know that it is your group of people who have designed such vicious things that have caused suffering and suffering? That is why people have so many greedy and evil thoughts. And now, you're saying that you created all these things for the sake of protection? Which one of the people who designed these vicious weapons didn't say that they were protecting the common people? Ouyang Sun was so angry that his face turned pale. Zhang Feng knew that he couldn't out-talk him. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. Seeing this, Ouyang Sun asked again, "What's wrong? You can't say it?" Chu Suiliang and the other two also looked at Zhang Feng with a solemn expression and said, "Zhang Feng kid, the reason why we came up the mountain was not because of your wine and food, but because we wanted to see what kind of amazing genius your unconventional academy could cultivate. However, what you showed us today was not something that could benefit people, but something that would cause misery and suffering. What do you have to say about this?" Seeing that Chu Suiliang was giving him a way out, Zhang Feng hurriedly bowed to Chu Suiliang and said, "Mr. Deng Shan. The reason why I did this is entirely because of Lao Li and the safety of the foreign merchants of the Tang dynasty. You should have heard that 300,000 troops besieged Jinla, and serious civil strife broke out in Tubo and Tuyuhun. I'm sure that the Turks won't just sit by and do nothing. Therefore, all of this is a conspiracy against the Tang dynasty. You can ask around. Since the drought in Longyu, extreme cold weather broke out in the northern grassland, and the pasture was seriously damaged. Then, the Turks broke out in civil strife. What happened after that? After that, there was a plague of locusts. Fortunately, the Tang dynasty has a wise and powerful emperor, so although we avoided the famine caused by the drought and the plague of locusts, they are different. For example, let's say that the kid's neighbor and the kid suffer from a food shortage at the same time. It's only because the kid is prepared and has stockpiled a lot of food, but the neighbor has been without food for several days. What do you think the neighbor will do? Ask for food. But there is only a little food, and it's not enough for the family to eat. I don't know how long the famine will last. If they can't get food, what will they do? Sun Simiao stroked his beard and said, if your analogy is used in the relationship between the Turks and the Tang dynasty, it's nothing more than robbery. Zhang Feng heard this and nodded. He cupped his fists gratefully and said, indeed, I only have a little bit of food in my house. If I lend it out, it will attract the attention of the entire village, and even the mountain bandits and robbers. Do you think I can only give what belongs to me to them? Or should I say that what belongs to me should belong to them? And if I fight back or defend passively, it's all my fault? Zhang Feng's pressuring made them instantly speechless. Especially Ouyang Sun. Ouyang Sun sighed and walked back to his desk to sit down. Only then did he say, what you said makes sense. However, hasn't His Majesty already sent out his troops? Why does he have to make such cruel weapons? Cruel? Zhang Feng laughed. May I ask if you have been to the battlefield? This. Ouyang Sun was stunned and said, I haven't. Good. That kid is asking if anyone has seen the tragic state of the place after the war between two armies or after it was plundered by the Turks. They were speechless again. Seeing this, Zhang Feng looked around and said, I have seen it. Ouyang Sun smacked his lips and said, did this kid misunderstand the meaning of the old man? This kid is using magic to scold us for wasting decades of study, isn't he? Hey! That bastard! Ouyang Sun immediately exploded when he thought about it. Fortunately, Sun Simiao hurriedly held him down and said with a smile, Old man, save it. The old man thinks that even if we fight a war of words together, we may not be able to beat this kid. Hearing this, they could not help but smile. Ouyang Sun, on the other hand, could only drink his tea and smoke angrily. Seeing this, Sun Simiao said, Zhang Feng is right. Weapons are no longer vicious. Just like this medicine in the hands of the old man, it can be both an antidote and a poison. The key is how to use it. And this kid also said that this thing, he is just doing it for the purpose of some kind of academic research. He wants to find more talents like this and invest in it. In other words, Zhang Feng is creating endless talents for the Tang dynasty. Isn't this spreading new branches and spreading new leaves? Just like the establishment of White Deer College. You can all see that this kid is ambitious. This time, the second Master Li personally agreed. Old Master Li is also the vice dean of the college. Just now, the second Master Li did not object. And I heard that the second Master Li asked this kid to start a business on the mountain. Just like the paper mill, the second Master Li did not say anything. What can we say? Hearing this, Ouyang Sun and the others could not help but remember that Li Shimin was still on the mountain. They could not help but look more serious. They all knew that the emperor urged Zhang Feng to open the college. And the reason why the college could be what it was today was because of the 3 generations of the Li family. Otherwise, how could a guy without strength, fame, and influence open a college in Chang'an? Are you dreaming or not? At this time, they carefully thought about Zhang Feng's words and could not help but think about it. They really understood something. Yu Shernan looked at them with a wry smile and said, Brothers, you see, do you want to stay? Or what? If you want to leave, I'll go to the second Masterly now. Nonsense. Ouyang Sun slammed the table and said, If we are not in the college, won't that kid turn it upside down? Who said that the old man is going to leave? He's not leaving. The old man wants to see what this bastard kid can do. Chapter 926. Outside the door. Zhang Feng didn't go far at all. In fact, Zhang Feng's heart had been in a panic for a long time. If these old stubborn people really took this matter to heart and quit, he would be miserable. But fortunately, after listening for a while, Zhang Feng's mind calmed down. With elder son's help, what he said just now was really effective. Zhang Feng didn't say any lies. These were all facts. However, there are always some people who are addicted to books, as well as their own biased view of the world. Does the pure land that they have imagined exist in this world? It did. It only existed if your fist was big enough. At this time, seeing that the situation was settled, Zhang Feng couldn't help but begin to think about the future plan. The dormitory buildings of the students and teachers had been uprooted, but they hadn't been renovated yet. However, this was a matter of time. At most, there was still a month before it would be full of students. Between the two dormitory buildings under the waterfall, there was originally a large area of thatch and reeds, and there was a big stone in the middle. However, at this time, several shirtless men were directing a group of stonemasons to carve something. Zhang Feng didn't bother to disturb them, lest he couldn't leave again. The grass and reeds around the stone sculpture had long been cleared away. At this time, there was really a group of people lining up. They were like worker ants, carrying baskets of cement. Not far away, a group of students was arguing about something with a piece of white paper under a crooked sycamore tree. Yu Baoqi, who looked silly, was actually sitting on the side and taking a nap. There were also groups of students around them, asking for advice from time to time. Obviously, it could be seen that Yu Shernan and others were very resourceful, managing this place in an orderly manner. However, when Zhang Feng's eyes drifted to the call of the pig farm not far away, he found that Mrs. Li, who was in a pink gauze, was actually squatting by the stream with Zhu Zi, Guzi Jingshu, and Zhang Yuyao, quietly waiting for a group of children to burn the beggar's chicken. A breeze blew over them. Jingshu actually made bursts of laughter that made Zhang Feng a little obsessed. At this moment, Zhang Feng couldn't help but be a little obsessed. But when he thought of Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao, and Yu Yuer, Zhang Feng's head suddenly hurt. Alas! With a heavy sigh, Zhang Feng hurriedly fled the scene at the moment when Jingshu looked over. It was as if he had been caught cheating on someone. When Zhang Feng returned to the cabin, Shiva seemed to have something to say, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just signaled to the room with his eyes. Zhang Feng didn't care. But when he pushed the door open, he was stunned. Originally, he thought that he had just explained the matter of the steel to Lao Li, and this guy should have rushed to do it. He didn't expect him to still be here. Seeing Zhang Feng come back, Li Shimin was minding his own business as he boiled tea in the small stove and asked with a smile, "How is it? It seems that the matter is settled?" "It's settled, but it's really a headache. This matter, I'll leave it to you in the future. It's so annoying." Zhang Feng pushed Li Shimin up from the reclining chair and sat his butt down. Only then did he say. Li Shimin was stunned and asked, "You mean you'll leave the smelter to me?" "You don't have to worry." Zhang Feng's right index finger and middle finger were pinched. Li Shimin's eyelids twitched, but he still passed Zhang Feng a cigarette. Zhang Feng took a puff and squinted his eyes. "What else? These things aren't complicated. I've said before that I'm only responsible for teaching. As for how they do it, I don't care. As long as there's no problem with the finished product, it's considered done. Otherwise, what do you want me to do with this mess on the mountain? I'm already busy here, and I still have to serve the other side. Don't you think I'm tired? Anyway, from now on you can handle these businesses. I'll just be in charge of splitting the money. After all, the three of you have shares in this academy. I don't believe that you won't care." "Shares? What's that?" Li Shimin hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng saw that the more he explained, the more troublesome it would be. He couldn't help but wave his hand and say, I don't know. Anyway, this matter is settled. The meaning of shares is... Forget it, I can't explain it clearly. Share it." As he spoke, Zhang Feng went into the room where the books were stored. As soon as he entered the door, he almost had a nosebleed. He didn't know when Jingshu had already tidied up the place. She had even placed a bed in front of the window. At this moment, there was a pair of sky-colored hot pants on the bed. Zhang Feng's mouth was dry as he looked at it. After looking away with difficulty, he pulled out a few pieces of white paper from the book of Jean. After exiting the room, Zhang Feng stuffed all the papers in his hand into Li Shimin's hands. These are all the key points in the production of firearms. Each piece of paper is a part. You can split them up and give them to your subordinates. Remember, don't spread these things out, especially the last piece. As Zhang Feng spoke, Li Shimin hurriedly pulled out the last piece of paper. Hao Ran saw the complete drawing of a gun that was made to look like a rifle. It appeared in their line of sight. Li Shimin hadn't seen the power of this thing yet. However, today he had seen the hastily made Mitsubishi stiletto. He couldn't help but regard the drawing in his hands as a treasure. Don't worry, even if I, Li Lauer, lose my life, no one will be able to take a peek at this plaything. Chapter 927. Upon hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded. That's all I need to hear. Just like what I've said earlier, if the things in my head were to spread out, the entire Great Tang dynasty would be in turmoil. Do you believe me? Not only that, but there will also be situations that will change the structure of the world. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better for me to write a book about all these things? Li Shimin also knew the seriousness of the matter, so he waved his hand and said, Wait a moment. While speaking, Li Shimin stood up. The moment he turned around, his eyes instantly regained the wisdom and domineering aura of an emperor. When he opened the door, Li Shimin didn't do anything, so he closed the door again. The moment Li Shimin closed the door, all the guards who were originally guarding Shao Mountain instantly approached Zhang Feng's cabin. Even their eyes became like that of an eagle's at this moment. They looked around coldly. At this time, Shiva was also invited to the mountain gate by 2 guards. No one knew what he was going to do. Only then did Li Shimin say, I know what you said, and I also know that it's related to interests. The reason you don't use the craftsmen of the Tang dynasty is that you're afraid that these people won't keep their mouths shut. But have you ever thought that if this group of people, once their families come, then they... Is there a lot of such things in history? In ancient times, in the Shang dynasty, in order to fight against the foreign barbarians, Fu Hao personally went to the battlefield. Wasn't this because King Zhou of Yin also felt that these barbarians were nothing to be afraid of? In the previous dynasty, Yang Guang insisted on destroying Goguryeo and underestimating the Turks. Is there a lot of such things? Quite a lot. If you knew that there would be the Lushan rebellion and the Meng Yuan dynasty's invasion of the south, would you say so? Zhang Feng opened his mouth but didn't say anything in the end. After all, Old Li would only take it as a fool's dream even if he told Old Li about it. Besides, I've already taken out the blunderbuss. As long as no one dares to make an enemy out of the Great Tang, no one will dare to make an enemy of the Great Tang. However, these things were hard to say. Therefore, at this time, Zhang Feng was also a little upset. All right, Lao Li, I understand what you're talking about. That's why I separated all the blueprints. This will prevent the core technology from being leaked. As long as we keep this core secret, even if someone finds out, what can they do? So what if he has the craftsmanship of the firearms? Do you know what Lao Tzu's intention is? Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin's interest was instantly piqued. Why? You keep talking about this matter, but, Zhang Feng sneered and said, actually, this gun is for others to see. And to put it bluntly, although the gun is good, the speed of reloading is too slow. Chapter 928. Li Shimin only knew about the tactics of the emperor. He also knew about the martial arts that Zhang Feng displayed before, but this, psychological tactics. Li Shimin couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He stretched out his hand and said, Such a good thing you don't want to share it? Seeing this, Zhang Feng slapped away Li Shimin's hand and said, Do you think this thing can come just because you want it? While speaking, Zhang Feng pointed to his head. This thing depends on one's perception. Do you think you can understand it if I show it to you? You're just a small businessman. Can you understand this thing? Li Shimin touched his nose and glanced at Zhang Feng. He also knew that he was being too hasty. He just joked, Didn't you say before that this thing is actually a trade route? I'm a businessman and often go to those chaotic places. Don't you think about my safety? We're all brothers. Look at you, Tess. Hearing this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but be a little anxious. Okay. When I work overtime at night, I'll get you a book. But you have to keep it well. This thing can really be passed down as a family heirloom. I can guarantee that as long as you have this thing, it'll be hard for your family not to prosper. In fact, Don't be fooled by how awesome the 5 major clans are now. As long as you really learn a little bit of their skills, I dare to bet that in less than 10 years, these guys will have to call you Big Brother. Li Shimin naturally wouldn't believe Zhang Feng's words. However, as long as this kind of psychology existed, why would Li Shimin be afraid of them? Seeing this, Li Shimin laughed heartily and said, "Brother, you're still the most practical. It's a pity that there's no wine. Otherwise, we'll get drunk." "Don't. What do you want to do after getting me drunk?" Zhang Feng was startled. There were several times when these people got him drunk and ran away with some unknown trick. How could Zhang Feng be fooled again? After the two of them laughed and joked for a while, they were suddenly attracted by the noise outside. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask in surprise, "What's going on the mountain today?" Zhang Feng was also confused. "No. Let's go out and take a look." As they spoke, they opened the door at the same time. The moment he opened the door, Zhang Feng shouted, Shiva, where are you?" "He's here." Shiva's timid voice came from the kitchen not far away. Shiva's expression was very strange. He looked at Li Shimin and wanted to greet him, but he didn't dare. In the end, he could only brace himself and cupped his fists towards Li Shimin. "Master Li Fengzi." "Hey." Zhang Feng didn't notice these details and asked, "What's going on?" "Over there, Mr. Bo Sure is holding some sort of Kuju competition. If all the students win, they can enjoy private lessons from the teachers." Zhang Feng and Li Shimin couldn't help but look at each other. They were really interested. These masters, why are they learning from me? Let's go and take a look. Shiva, tell us, what is this rule and when did it start? Zhang Feng and Li Shimin walked in front while Shiva followed Zhang Feng like an attendant. When the guards saw Lawyer Han and Zhang Feng come out, they wobbled and returned to their posts as if nothing had happened. Along the way, Zhang Feng and Li Shimin also saw many students rushing towards the waterfall. Now, at the edge of the waterfall, someone had used quicklime to draw a huge field on the lush green grass. On the field, groups of students were lined up, looking around. Even though Zhang Feng was far away, he could still see the basketball flying in the air. He couldn't help but be so angry that his beard was trembling. Li Shimin also saw the basketball and looked at Zhang Feng. He couldn't help but take 2 steps back. At this moment, Zhang Feng's angry roar rang out. "Who allowed you to play like this? All of you stop." Zhang Feng's voice was very loud. Even the noisy Kuju could be faintly heard. Even the 3 girls, Zhang Sun and Wu Go, were standing under the crooked jujube tree not far from the waterfall. They were eating jujubes that had just been picked from the jujube tree. At this time, they were curiously staring at Zhang Feng. However, Empress Zhang Sun was naturally more intelligent than others. Thinking about the situation at the foot of the mountain, she couldn't help but smile. Yu Shernan and the others couldn't help but frown. With their hands behind their back, they stared at Zhang Feng, who was hurriedly carrying his robe, and said, "Brat, what are you doing? Isn't it just a Kuju? Did you play at the foot of the mountain? Don't tell me we can't play at the top of the mountain?" Zhang Feng was speechless as he stared at the muddy footprints on the field and said, "Teacher, this thing isn't Kuju. It's a basketball. It's played with your hands." Seeing that he couldn't explain it clearly, Zhang Feng hurriedly waved at Li Shimin. "Old Li, why don't you tell them how to play basketball? I can't explain it clearly." Li Shimin heard this and sighed. He stepped forward and explained to everyone. Chapter 929. With Li Shimin's explanation, Yu Shernan and the others finally understood. "I thought that you were busy with the mid-autumn hunt at the foot of the mountain and didn't know how you were doing. Therefore, I came to a conclusion when I saw the basketball you brought up. Didn't you want to invite the people from the mid-autumn hunt to Shao Mountain? Isn't this the time to show off the spirit of our academy? Therefore, this Kuju game is indispensable. Since this kid doesn't want to play basketball, boys, whoever knows how to play Kuju, stand out for the old man and let the dean see your skills. In the future, when the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights come up the mountain, it will be the time for you to show your faces." Yu Shernan and the others were indeed old men. After seeing the truth of the matter, they ignored Zhang Feng and only spoke to Li Shimin. Zhang Feng was so angry that he rolled his eyes. Li Shimin was also interested. He waved his hand and made the decision for Zhang Feng. Is there kuju on the mountain? Yes. I loved kuju when I was at the foot of the mountain, so I brought one up the mountain. Most of the students here didn't know Li Shimin, not to mention that Li Shimin had put on some makeup. They only knew that he was the dean's brother and had a good relationship with the four great Confucians. At this moment, a few students hurriedly ran to find kuju. Li Shimin and Yu Shernan sat in front of the stage and then waved to Zhang Feng and said, "Come and sit. Take it as relaxing. You are busy all day. It's a good thing to have kuju on the mountain." When the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights come and see that there is nothing on the mountain, where will you put your face? Seeing this, Zhang Feng could only sit beside Li Shimin angrily. At the same time, the two kuju teams also entered the field. According to Li Shimin's comments, one of the teams looked cynical. Moreover, the people who were dressed gorgeously were the stubborn people from Chong and City. As for the other team, there was no need for Li Shimin to introduce them. Zhang Feng naturally knew them. The leader was the current manager of the paper mill, Qian Wanli. Behind him were all people from the paper mill. However, when they looked at those stubborn people, their eyes were filled with disdain. A whistle sounded. The two teams rushed onto the field. As for the stubborn ones, they had also inherited their own ruffian tendencies and helpless techniques. They would use all kinds of sinister and ruthless moves. It didn't take long for these stubborn players to gang up on him as they repeatedly broke the rules. This scene made Zhang Feng unable to look straight at it. He had long overestimated the kuju of the Tang dynasty, but now it seemed that... How was this King kuju? This was simply a group of helpless farts fighting, okay? Seeing this, Zhang Feng sat cross-legged on the ground and pretended to be mysterious. After a while he shouted, "The 8th set of radio gymnastics begins now. 1 2 3 4, 2 2 3 4. Chapter 930. Looking at Zhang Feng's movements, which could not be considered elegant, but could not be considered handsome either. Not to mention the few people sitting at the top, even all the students present were stunned. However, the women, the veterans, and the onlooking craftsmen burst into laughter instead. Zhang Feng knew that these things seemed a little out of place, but he still braced himself and finished this set of morning exercises. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Qian Wanli, did you see clearly just now?" Qian Wanli did not know that Zhang Feng would actually use him. He said in a daze, "This if master can teach me again, I will naturally understand. Okay, come and find me tonight. When you learn it, you can sleep." Zhang Feng did not hesitate. He waved his hand and said loudly, "Everyone is dismissed for today. Think about it carefully. From now on, you must start morning exercises every day at 7 in the morning. Then, run 3 laps around the academy for me." Dismissed. These words were said in one breath. Even if Yu Shernan wanted to stop them, he did not have the chance. After Zhang Feng sat down and took a sip of tea, a few people asked, "Kid, why does old man feel that this set of tricks of yours is useless?" "Don't you think so, brother-son? Brother-son? Brother-son?" When Yu Shernan called out 3 times, there was still no response. Everyone could not help but look up in confusion. When they looked up, they realized that Sun Simiao had been staring at Zhang Feng's position in a daze. After the last shout, Sun Simiao came back to his senses. He coughed and said, "Is this morning exercise really from the 5 animal frolics?" At this moment, everyone finally realized where the problem was. With a whoosh, they looked at Zhang Feng. Although the 5 animal frolics was not considered a classic, there were copies of this kind on the market. The few people here were all experts in this field. However, what was this that Zhang Feng had just brought? When had they ever seen something like this? Hearing Sun Simiao's question, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "Dr. Sun, do you think there's a problem with this thing?" Sun Simiao nodded solemnly. With an extremely solemn expression, he said, "Although the old man can't tell where this kid got this thing from, this thing is indeed a good thing. Although it's not as noisy as the 5 animal frolics, it's a lot more interesting." "So what you mean is..." Zhang Feng's heart was also hanging by a thread. He didn't know what Sun Simiao was going to say. However, This thing was improved after a long period of research by many people. It was suitable for primary and secondary school students. There shouldn't be any problems, right? Under Zhang Feng's nervous gaze, Sun Simiao stroked his beard and shook his head. After a while he said, "That's right. This thing is good stuff." Feng Zi is an expert at making money. But spending money isn't easy either. This key is the key to the underground cellar. Today, this old man will hand it over to you. As he spoke, under Zhang Feng's envious gaze, the old village chief stuffed the key into Zhang Yuyao's hand. Then, ignoring the blushing Zhang Yuyao, he turned to Jingshu and said, "You are a good girl. Old man isn't as good as you in all aspects. Feng Zi, this child, I will need you to work harder in the future. This is the key to the food factory." Now, in the cave at the back of the food factory, all the rations on the mountain are hidden there. Adding them all up, this old man has just calculated that there are about 20,000 dong. The daily income, the account books, etc. Tomorrow, find some time to go down the mountain. This old man will let you take a look at the account books. Old village chief, I can't do this. I don't have any status. How can I take on this responsibility? Jingshu hurriedly refused. But how could she stop the old village chief? Zhang Feng couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly stopped Jingshu, saying, "Just accept it, don't waste the old village chief's good intentions." Hearing this, the old village chief patted the back of Jingshu's hand and said earnestly, "Little girl, I am doing this for your own good. In the future, when you marry into my family, you will have to move." Hearing this, Zhang Feng's face darkened. He hurriedly stopped the old village chief who was telling the two girls about the previous scandal and said, "Old village chief, today I didn't ask you to come here for this. Let's talk about the matters on the mountain. I am very busy during this period of time. This food factory and the paper-making workshop. Please look after them. Also, I have set up a smelting factory. Where did I set up the rubber factory for the cowhide yellow? You know all of these, right?" Speaking of serious matters, the old village chief couldn't help but sigh. He pointed at Zhang Feng with disappointment and said to the two girls, Look, this is your man, this prodigal son." Zhang Feng hurriedly begged for mercy. Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh secretly. Seeing that the matter was about to be settled, the old village chief became serious. "I have heard about this matter. These are all your businesses. Since the academy is yours, and we have followed you to become successful, we can help you take care of this matter. On the way here, this kid has already explained everything clearly." The old village chief pointed at Shiva and said, "As for the other matters, we don't care. Regarding the order of the academy, a country has its laws, and a family has its rules. We will naturally listen to you." What else could Zhang Feng say? He could only smack his lips and give a thumbs up. "Old village chief, you are awesome." Chapter 932. Gonzyuan waited until the old village head reluctantly left with a cigarette in his hand. Only then did he bow and push open the door to Zhang Feng's room. As soon as he entered, Gonzyuan hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to look at Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao. He bowed to Zhang Feng, then hesitated about the identity of the two girls. His face flushed red. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, Okay, you don't have to greet me. You should know what I asked you to do today, right?" "Yes, I know." "Then it's easy. Now that the construction of the academy is focused, how long will it take to finish the teaching building, canteen, and dormitory?" 10 days, at most 10 days. Zhang Feng nodded. 10 days was about enough time. At the very least, by the time he brought the team back from the autumn hunt, the academy would be almost done with their work. However, Zhang Feng still shook his finger and said, "It's too slow. This must be done before I come back from the mid-autumn hunt, okay? As for the construction of the 3 factories in the back mountain, it can be delayed." This, Gonziyuan was a little embarrassed. However, at this time, Shiva whispered, "Fengzi, I have something not worth saying." "Say it." "I have studied the construction method of the Tang dynasty, and it is completely different from the current one. So, I can't help but think of a way to speed up the construction." Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded and gestured for him to continue. If we use the method of dividing the construction into batches, levels, and day and night, as long as the weather is good, we should be able to complete the construction in less than 6 days. Moreover, when I, Zhenla, built the palace, I used charcoal to remove moisture in the rooms, speeding up the indoors. Good. Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but applaud. This Shiva really hit the nail on the head. Wasn't this the kind of division system in the future? Divide it into 3 or 4 batches, and proceed with the construction in an orderly manner. This way, they could perfectly avoid wasting manpower and slacking off. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng waved his hand and gestured for Shiva to step forward. I'll leave this matter to you. It's inconvenient to bring you along during this period of time, so you can handle this matter for me first. This way, your presence on the mountain will be greatly increased. How about it? Shiva's eyes reddened when he heard that. He expressed his gratitude again and again. How could he still be the crown prince? After explaining everything, Zhang Feng's head was about to explode. However, there was still one more thing that needed to be dealt with. That was Qian Wanli, who was standing outside the door, stammering. Zhang Feng had to go out and teach him radio gymnastics. After finishing all this, Zhang Feng walked into the living room with weak limbs. At this time, Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao were still waiting for him. F***CK. Chwayer. Help me comb my hair. Zhang Feng roared angrily. Only then did little Cui enter the room. She turned back to look at the young lady outside and the scene of Jing Shu's laughter. Zhang Feng's complexion was very bad. It wasn't that he didn't rest well, but that he was angered by Li Tai. He wished that he could turn into a little brat at this moment. He saw Li Tai sitting in Zhang Yuyao's arms, letting the 2 girls and a little girl, steamed bun, feed him mouthful after mouthful of food. This little guy actually accepted it without any hesitation and was even picky about it. This scene made Zhang Feng's eyes turn red. He angrily rushed to the door and roared, Shiva, where the F***CK did you go? Where's Lao Tzu's food? Teacher, I didn't put it at the bedside for you. Shiva stood at the door, feeling wronged. However, when he turned around and saw the food box in Li Tai's arms, he immediately said, I'll be right there. As he spoke, he quickly ran away. Shiva wasn't Lao Bai. He was a veteran among veterans. When he saw Zhang Feng's jealousy, how could he not know what happened? Zhang Feng's actions caused Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao to laugh even louder. After a while, the food was delivered. Zhang Feng glared at Li Tai. The 2 of them looked like they were in a fit of pique. They glared at each other, neither willing to give in to the other. Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao were speechless. As they ate, Zhang Feng fiercely glared at Li Tai. Zhang Feng had a feeling. This little brat gave him a very uncomfortable feeling. It was extremely uncomfortable. It was as if everything that had happened had been deliberately arranged. How was this like a mother *****'s little baby? After a while, the 2 of them lay on the floor and burped while rubbing their stomachs. Taking this opportunity, Zhang Feng asked, Little brat, if your parents knew that you snuck into my room, do you believe that you would be beaten? I don't believe it. Li Tai grinned, revealing a pair of dimples. He smiled and said, Father and Mother said that you're very awesome. They want me to learn from you. Also, I want to learn from you. That's why I wanted to see if you're the kind of immortal they're talking about. Zhang Feng glared at him. Who's the one who doesn't have a butt and said that I'm an immortal? Look at the immortal. Is he so angry because of you? He would have sent you flying with a slap.